What is up, Asymmetry? How y'all doing? Well, we are long overdue for a fall wrap-up, but Brock and Brandon and myself were able to squeak out a podcast in a quiet afternoon in the workshop. It's been a frantic amount of bonsai happening around Mirai to reflect on the fall season, what we learned, where we've grown, talk about the meaning of life. We threw in some Korean Hornbeam assessments from Kokufu albums, if you guys are interested in joining along, and just generally had a great, wholesome, good old conversation that bounced all over the place, but was all rooted in the positive spirit of bonsai as a practice and a lifestyle. So hopefully you guys aren't expecting too much, but enjoy the banter that makes up the Mirai studio these days. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Brock, Brandon, and myself, y'all.
Are we just marking any and all of them, or just good ones?
I mean, mark the ones that are worth talking about. For one reason or another worth talking about.
Yeah.
That's like I think that's one of the beauties of like looking at trees is it's like not all of them are good, but there's just as much to take from something that's like subpar or marginal, because then you start thinking, if I had this tree, how would I make this better? I think that's like as much exercising the muscle of bonsai as anything else. It's like the one thing that I do notice when I look at the Kokufu as it like evolved into the exhibition that has become this world event on an annual basis, and particularly I focus on the 70s as like my wheelhouse for Kokufu albums. I think that was like the pinnacle of Japanese bonsai from what I see. Not to say that the 80s aren't great, the 90s aren't great, the 100th that's coming up isn't going to be phenomenal, because like the World Bonsai Exhibition in 2017 was insane. It was like the greatest hits. But when you see the Kokufu winners in any of the albums as the Kokufu became established, they do stand apart. They are definitively deserving. Typically, very rarely do you see a Kokufu winner in the 70s and early 80s that are not deserving of that prize. Like the tree, the display, everything stands apart from all of the other trees in the album. I mean, I'm looking at 73 and I'm like, every time you get to a Kokufu winner, it's like, yes, that is a tree that stands apart from all of the other trees in the album.
Interesting. Would you say that's more because of how the show is set up, or does it get harder to tell later on because there's more trees of that caliper, or does it seem like the displays or something got less impressive, or the general qualities increased more? Or?
I think it's because, well, I don't know for sure. My assumption is when you were in the 70s was probably when the Kokufu had the highest number of submitted entries in the jury process, most likely. Mm-hmm. And when you get that intense number of juried trees to select from, then the exhibition becomes that much higher quality. So like if there's 248 spots or somewhere in that rough vicinity of trees in any Kokufu exhibition, and you've got 600 submissions, 800 submissions, the jury process is insane. I mean, so the jury process for the Kokufu, we would take the trees to the Green Club. They would have tents set up with table, like sturdy card tables, basically, underneath these tents at the Green Club in the parking lot. And all of the professionals would be bringing in all of their client trees that are going to be entered into the Kokufu, and they would be being set up and staged. And then you would be cleaning them from transport to get them to their very highest level, adjusting anything. All of the professionals are looking over the trees one more time, but the jury are out there looking at all of the trees coming in, because you can see them all on these tables all together, right? It's not this singular process at that moment. You're seeing the totality of entries in these tents, and sometimes when it would snow, I mean, you would have There was one or two Kokufus where there were like several feet of snow on the ground.
Oh, wow.
And these tents are set up and there's a ton of snow and like people are shoveling snow to be able to get the trees into these tents, and it's just super intense, right? And now all of a sudden you gonna get on the mic or?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know we were podcasting.
Yeah. Get that up to your kisser, dude. Yeah, you can adjust that as you see fit. You got to twist the living daylights out of that thing, or else it's probably still gonna sag.
Okay.
The mics are hot.
Cool.
Yeah, that's why I shortened it up. But
Nice.
anyways,
Yep.
you'll just slowly drift down with the mic, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Brock, you can raise that if you want to. I don't know, or you can lower your chair, whatever you got to do. These mic stands have been here for since 2017, so
The long haul.
they've held a lot of mic weight for a long time.
Right.
They just kind of drift down as we talk. My shorty right here is like the most dependable of all of them because I just don't have it all cantilevered out there like a Frank Lloyd Wright deck or something. Anyways, but like at the beginning of my apprenticeship, like 2004 was the first, I guess it would have been February of 2005 was the first Kokufu I ever went to, which I'm not sure what exhibition number that was. I could probably look it up if I really wanted to, but I honestly don't really need to for this conversation. But it's like there were 500 or 600 trees there for the jury.
Wow.
6 years later, in 2010, I think I went back and helped with the 2011 Kokufu. There might have been like 350 trees
Oh, wow.
for 248 spots. So then you start to see trees that maybe wouldn't have made it into that exhibition 6 years earlier, making it into that exhibition.
Right.
But the jury, which is give or take on any year, the jury is 12 to 16 people that sit inside of the Green Club, and they set up this rolling track, and they put the trees on wood boards, and they roll them in front of the jurors in this room, and they literally sit there from, I think it starts at like 7 or 8 a.m., and they sit there until it's done.
Wow.
I mean, they might take a lunch break. I'm sure they take restroom breaks or something. Like, they're not totally crazy, but like, and as that tree rolls in front of the jurors, they give it a score from, I believe, 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. One or the other, right? They give the score for the jury process. And afterwards, they put on a big whiteboard that everybody can see the total score from the number of judges for every tree. And it's almost inevitably a perfect bell curve. The highest score totals are going to be the fewest number of trees. There might be 1 or 2 trees that gets like super high score. And that tree's not guaranteed to win the Kokufu because once it goes on display, it's about the display in the exhibition, right? Everything's got to be done well. They're just judging the tree in its pot as it rolls across the jury process, right?
Right.
And so you get to this critical score at the peak of the bell curve in the middle of the pack that, you've got 2 trees with, say there's 12 judges and, if 6 is the highest score and it gets a 5, well, then that's a score of 60. You might have 1 tree, 2 trees, right? And then the next one's like 59, a score of 59, a score of 58. And there's more and more trees, a score of 57, totaling all of the judges' cards, right? Until you get to like the 40s, and somewhere in the low 40s is typically the cutoff point, and you'll have 37 trees with that same score.
Right.
But because, 3 trees, 2 trees, 5 trees, 8 trees, 10 trees, 14 trees, as the scores go from, say, 60 down to like 48, 47. Now 47's got 18 trees, 22 trees, 26 trees, 29 trees, and like 45, 44's got 34, 43's got, 38. now all of a sudden you've got 38 trees and there might only be room for 15 of those.
Right.
So they take all of those 38 trees, and I'm not sure if they like literally did a number in a hat or like how they drew those numbers, but they literally did like a random drawing of the 17 places for the 38 plus trees that had that score. And those are the trees that get into the Kokufu.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So when you're a young professional and you've got like a handful of clients and maybe one or two clients that have like a Kokufu worthy tree, and that tree is sitting in that range, you're on pins and needles waiting to see what trees get drawn, because you've then got to go tell your client it got in or it didn't.
Right.
And that's a make or break for a bonsai professional right there, because you need that client's tree to get in so that he continues to be your client. You need that tree to get in so you can get more clients, because now that client in their community word of mouth is going to say, this young professional got my tree, prepared this tree and made it a Kokufu worthy tree. So you can see like the critical moment. And it was like you saw like spirits made or spirits broken in that drawing.
I bet. Yeah, that would be tense for sure.
Right? And one of the big moments is in that professional's personal understanding of his relationship with his client. Did he sell that tree saying this is a Kokufu tree? Because when you sell a tree saying it's a Kokufu tree and it doesn't get into the Kokufu, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
And occasionally, like it's a small community. Word travels fast through the community of how things were handled. There's a lot of like gossip and stuff like that. And you'd hear all the stories of like, that person screwed that client, freaked out and took their trees elsewhere. That, that guy's in deep doo-doo. And it was like really intense. And then after the trees are selected, you come back the next day, right? So you load all the trees in one day. The jury process is the next day. The third day, you do the photo shoot for these books. All 240 some trees are shot in a single day.
Holy cow.
And there's generally 2 photography stations on either side of the bottom floor of the Green Club that have the tatami mat, the backdrops, the photographer, the photo assistants, and then the professional and their apprentices there to operate the photo shoot, right? And so like one of the things about the Kokufu albums is you can look at the stands under a lot of the trees in the Kokufu albums and you'll see that same stand under multiple trees. Because for the photo shoot to be able to, and here's the kicker, after the photo shoot is over, you load the trees up and you take them back that night of the photo shoot.
Oh.
They shut it down. Like pictures are taken, everybody go home. So if you loaded a truck full of, for us at Mr. Kimura's, upwards of 60 trees for a normal Kokufu.
Wow.
You got a truck full of 60 trees, you got to get all the stands back. You might have brought the stands in a separate truck a day or two later after the jury process for the photo shoot. Now you got to load those stands plus the trees that had maybe occupied the entire truck.
Oh.
So like people don't really understand the logistical situation of the jury process of the Kokufu and everything that goes into it. So you can't bring all of the independent stands that are going to go into the exhibition, because if you had 60 trees, you got 60 stands.
Yeah.
But if you have 60 trees for the photo shoot, you might bring 25 stands for 60 trees.
Right.
So then you've got this organized numbering process. For this stand has 7 stickers of tree numbers on the back of it. Oh, that tree number's getting shot, bring the stand. The stands are sort of off to the side. You've got people bringing the tree. You've got people bringing the stand. You've got people taking the tree off, right? And so like this orchestration is really, we've never seen anything like it in the United States or the Western world in general. It is such a critical execution of bonsai on a large scale in terms of the highest quality trees in the highest quantities with the most to lose if you fail. Fail meaning drop a tree.
Yeah.
Fail meaning forget a stand. Fail meaning screw somebody else's tree up. Like, as an apprentice walking around the Kokufu jury process, you are completely aware of everything that's happening. I mean, it's like a Jedi focus for the Kokufu jury process. The most intense time.
I'm sure.
Every year. And the lead up to it is intense. And then you take them back. And that night that we took them back, we were always the last photo shoot of the Kokufu, Mr. Kimura's, because he had the largest number of trees.
Yeah, because they probably do it by professional. So
They do it by distance, from Tokyo.
Oh, yeah.
So the people with the greatest distance oftentimes don't bring the largest number of trees. And Omiya and Mr. Kimura being just outside of Omiya, those nurseries and gardens were the last to do the shoots. But also imagine being somebody who has 1 or 2 trees, and then you're waiting behind somebody that has 60 trees. So it's like there's a community courtesy that takes place there. So we were always the last to shoot with the most number of trees, which means we were typically loading oftentimes in the dark, driving back. It's wintertime. It's February.
Can't leave them in there.
Or the jury's in January, excuse me. You can't leave them in the back of the truck. These trees have been kept in a greenhouse to not have winter color. They've been repotted into their Kokufu containers, oftentimes severely repotted to get them into the small container. So you get back at dark, turn on all the floodlights, everything, illuminate everything, and you start shuttling trees back to the greenhouse. So you're unloading a truck in the dark with the highest quality trees in Japan. You're carrying them on carts back to the greenhouse. The greenhouse can't be left open. Like, there's just so many moments where catastrophic things can happen. It is like so exhausting, right? And then you basically finish at, 9, 10, 11 p.m. You go home, and the next morning it's business as usual. Show back up 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, clean the garden. Like, we're back in it now. And oftentimes the trees that did not make it into the Kokufu exhibition, if they are not going to reattempt to be entered the following year, are repotted out of their containers the day after the jury photo shoot. So now we're repotting anything that didn't make it in out of show container back into native container so that it can start to recover, right? And so that we don't have that workload at the end of the Kokufu. But we put those trees back into the greenhouse. All of them get heavily watered because oftentimes they're not being watered during the jurying process because it's cold and it's wintertime, but like they're still drying out, right? So you're watering at like 11 p.m. I was always in charge of the greenhouse with the Kokufu trees, which was so stressful to do the watering in the greenhouse with those trees. And because you can't screw up the moss, the heat in the greenhouse is making their roots more active, so they dry out and you can't tell. Like my first year as an apprentice, I took over the back, which has the greenhouse in it, and Mr. Kimura just kept telling me, water the trees in the Kokufu, water the trees. But they looked wet to me all the time, so I didn't water. We started doing the Kokufu repot, and they were all so bone dry once we got into the container. Like, it was like really, really sketchy. We had to submerge every single tree into like a vat of water to rehydrate the root balls. It was such like a learning lesson, but like not the learning lesson that you want to have, right? Like the O-ship meter like spiked at that moment.
I think about that often whenever I'm checking water in the wintertime. I'm like, I remember one time Ryan said something about they looked wet, but when he started repotting, they were bone dry. So like at the museum when I first started there, I was like, is this wet or not?
Yeah, greenhouse watering is like a whole new thing.
Correct.
It's a whole different animal. But you've been talking about it down in the workshop with the pygmy cypresses because they don't look dry. I mean, they start to look dry, right? But they're not dry like you see in the summer when they're dry, and it's like that's dry.
Yeah,
they still have moisture in them.
Yeah,
but like it's not the same because the same environmental factors are not showing you that. So it still is moist, and in the summertime you might not water it, but in the wintertime it has to be watered at that moment. Right. Yeah. And you're seeing all the pygmies pushing roots out of the soil right now. Like they're growing vascularly right now. This is what a lot of people don't realize. If a tree isn't frozen or getting environmental moisture, condensation, humidity, obviously rainfall, duh. But if it's not, and we've had a warm winter like we've had here, everything's producing roots right now. Everything's producing copious quantities of roots. It's actually the superpower of the Pacific Northwest is the vascular growth that we get through the fall. We get more vascular growth than anywhere else in the country.
I mean, a lot of people say that trees suffer and more trees, die in the wintertime than any other time of the year because of the missed water management.
Could be. Yeah, that could be. Yeah, I've never heard that, but that could be.
Okay.
It's interesting.
All right.
It's been a monster year here, though. I mean, we have absolutely turned and burned on some trees. Finally, I've been dreaming about the Ponderosa onslaught for like 15 years here, where when we hit Ponderosa season, we just dial in the Ponderosas. And I would say this year, we flat out put the pedal to the metal on the Ponderosas because it's such like a critical pruning moment.
Right.
For a long needle pine species where you can get away with reduction and not suffer needle elongation the following year. It's like critical timing mechanism. And we nailed it.
Yeah, we probably dialed in like what, 20 or 30, you think?
20 or 30 easily. Yeah, absolutely. And then we switched gears almost instantaneously to the deciduous when they started dropping their leaves. And I would say we got through 90% of maybe even 95%. All the elms are wired, all the aspens are wired, all the maples are taken care of. The beeches are done. The hornbeams, all except for the hornbeam on the rock, has been pruned. I mean, it was like pretty monumental. The Sidonias, pseudo-Sidonias, the ginkgos are all wired and pruned.
Yep.
Pretty monumental scope of work. And now we're shifting into the junipers.
Right.
And this is the next. This is like an optimal season for live vein deadwood work because we can afford to come in and take the time. Right?
Yeah, able to focus and just blast away with the power washer and get it painted. It's not drying. The wood's not drying as fast, so painting. So still, you want to get it done in one sitting, but not as like, grab the sprayer, go, can't stop.
Yeah. No, it's. I think it's fantastic.
The Fordhams are being put to use.
Fordhams, we're about ready to need to grease the shafts on the Fordhams. They're running with a little bit of a squeal these days.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's fun. You guys asked me yesterday, is this how bonsai works as far as like doing these chunks on these species? And I told you guys, well, I haven't ever had the workforce with like a team of really of talented individuals that are working consistently to be able to have like the workflow keep moving. People would come and go. So for 2 or 3 days, we could work on something and then they were gone, like students or classes or talented individuals that would come for a short period of time and then go back to their lives. But now we have the ability to really focus and move through these scopes of work. It really is, for me, it's like where I always saw Mirai going.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's exciting. I think this is just the beginning of something, great.
Oh, yeah.
But, as we continue to push through the next few years and are able to see, the fruits of our labor, I think it should be pretty rewarding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because refining native species to the degree that they're capable of being refined to, and also, here's the other thing, refining natural forms, organic forms, all of these kind of experimental aesthetics that we've pushed into Mirai means you've got to be on top of it. So if you're not on top of it, then you never get it to the point where it shows what's actually possible. So now we're starting to look at it, and I'm starting to think, okay, so now we're actually going to get to see what refinement on a reiterative redwood looks like. Now we're going to get to see what refinement on a large scale of ponderosas looks like. Now we're going to get to see what wind-informed refinement looks like on a significant number of species across, a multiple stylistic exploration. I think that's really fun.
Oh, it's been amazing, yeah. And even just like that immediate satisfaction of putting a tree back out there and it's got all the tips pointing the right way, and like they've always looked nice, but then as you just dial them in and walk around the garden, it's really starting to pop off.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah, it is really, really, really fun. We had a pretty harrowing experience putting the rain cloth up. That was not, I don't know if that's ever going to be smooth.
Yeah.
Like, we've talked about some mechanical modifications to the arches to make that a lot less dangerous. Dude, I thought I broke my hand, man. That pole came down from like 25 feet, and my hand was the only thing that it hit. And I'll take that any day over it hitting a tree, but that really smarted. That was painful.
Oh, yeah. Oof. Cold, wet hands, too. Really just start singing when they're hit, too.
Oh, and it still hurts. And it immediately swelled up. I was like, "Oh shit, I got a broken hand." I was slightly nervous for how that was going to work out. Like the next day, like next several days.
Yeah,
We had about 5 close calls.
We had some acts of God that narrowly put the lightsaber of the aluminum rods on the arches, like between 2 trees seamlessly.
Yeah, right.
Like, you don't get that lucky every day. The first time a rod ever fell off, Miguel and I were doing that by ourselves, and it fell smack dab on one of my favorite trees.
Yeah, right.
It was, and thank God they're aluminum because they're light, but it nevertheless, it did a little bit of damage. It left a mark.
Yeah, right.
You
know, it would.
Part of the environment at Mirai.
Right. Yeah, all right. Yeah, we've had a few fun projects putting some monkey poles in the ground too.
That's true. In straight mud.
Yeah, right.
In straight mud.
Mm-hmm.
Redwood greenhouses all put together and ready for the season.
Looking sharp. Yeah. The shocking thing when we were putting those monkey poles in the ground in the Cortin area was how dry it was once we got past. I mean, we're talking standing water on the ground, and it was bone dry inside.
Oh, yeah.
That actually kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the soil here is so fine and dense that it just does not permeate well at all.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Is that the basic soil science of it?
Yeah. These like clays and the finer grain stuff compared to sand. Like sand's got all that pore space for water to flow through, and gravels. Right. But clay is like, instead of grains, it's like flakes of material, so they sit really tightly and just don't let anything through.
Well, I read something about. So there's catastrophic flooding in Washington right now.
Yeah.
Atmospheric rivers blasting the Pacific Northwest. And I read an article that was written 2 weeks ago that said the Willamette Valley was in like a severe state of drought.
Yeah, my mom lives down there, and I moved up from Eugene, and they have had more sunny days and no rain, really. I mean, they're getting light drizzle and rain, but just compared to 100 miles north of where we're at, and then another 100 to 150 miles north to Seattle, it seems night and day.
Oh, it's like completely different ecosystems almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even up there, I'm pretty sure that until now, it's been a pretty dry year. Like, it hasn't been very rainy up there prior to this. Like, there's been some stuff, but like November was pretty dry, October was warm and sunny. Like, it was definitely wild, and now it's like full blown just inches.
Yeah, they're calling for upwards of 2 inches in the next 24 hours here. Last night was torrential rain.
Yeah,
last night
it was
a
lot.
Shocking rain last night. When I showed up yesterday, there's like trees tipped over down on the county road, and it's just like it's so hard. This place, not being native to Oregon, and I think even being native to Oregon, I think native Oregonians are like, I don't really know what's happening right now. This is crazy. Yeah, it is really something to behold. The annual difference in how things go down, because it's not like it hasn't been wet and raining, and yet measurable rain is different than the presence of rain.
Right. Yeah.
So like digging those monkey poles and seeing it's still bone dry 6 inches below the surface, where there's literally standing water and mud up to your ankle, it was just like pretty shocking to me.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a rainforest. Some people laugh when I say that, but
literally, yeah,
it is.
Temperate rainforest. Yeah, it's the real deal. it is the real deal.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. People always assume that when you say rainforest, they're thinking tropical or, something a little bit different than this. But this is definitely a rainforest.
I like the temperate rainforest vibe in terms of the presence of conifers in a rainforest. Mm-hmm. I think that's really unique because to your point, I always thought rainforest, we're talking tropical Amazon as a rainforest,
right?
Rainforest where, Fern Gully, Jamaica, Amazon, Brazil, up through Central America, rainforest. Yeah, that totally makes sense. When I went and visited my sister in Nicaragua back in like the late 90s, driving through Nicaragua, you could see where they had completely cut the rainforest to make hardwood charcoal. Like using the rainforest as a resource, and how it turned it into a desert.
Oh, wow.
So like there were just these patches where rain stopped falling because the canopy mass had, it triggers moisture release from the atmosphere, and then that canopy mass was gone, and it was literally a desert.
Yeah, it's wild.
And it was just super hardcore to really wrap my mind around. Oh, that's what happens when you cut trees.
Right.
Like this is the whole thing with the mega fires down in the giant sequoias when we did the cone collection. There's a huge debate, like a naturalist debate of, do you go in and replant, or do you let nature take its course? And a lot of naturalists are saying, look, you got to let go of the rope. This is the mega fire happen, and we got to let it repopulate. But people that are looking at sort of all factors included, fire suppression causes the mega fires. So by fire suppression, we've sort of abandoned the naturalist approach, right? Like fire suppression created an unnatural fire that has burned such a significant swath of land that the same amount of moisture is not going to drop. And now it's such a big burnt mass that the repopulation of sequoia into the center of those mega fires is not possible. Because there's too much of a distance, right? And so they're saying if we don't replant and you don't get that tree canopy in those areas, the moisture is not going to drop that sustains this species, and now you've lost critical ecosystem for this tree that only occurs in this very small mass of land.
Wow.
Right? And that was really when I went down after the mega fires and did the cone collection. I didn't do the cone collection. I basically Sherpa'd ropes and equipment for other people that were more skilled to do the cone collection. But I was there and I got to see it, and I got to climb the giant sequoia, which was awesome. But it was like, it was very sobering to recognize how big walking through that in Kings Canyon, walking through that mega fire burn, how big of a land mass. 25% of the giant sequoias were eradicated in 2 years.
Right.
So when something like that happens, and then the understory just gets destroyed too, would you say the understory comes back first before anything else, but then it can't really sustain itself because it doesn't have the protection of the upper story?
Yeah, I think what I saw, because even in one of the burn areas, it was 1 year removed. In another one of the burn areas, it literally was a month after the fire, and things were still smoldering and smoking, and the ground was still hot.
Wow.
But in the area that was a year removed, you had new sequoia seedlings literally covering the ground. Like these tiny little spiky cryptomeria looking juvenile sequoia seedlings regerminating and starting to grow, and the cycle of regeneration post fire that you would historically see in the smaller fires, but on the mega fire it was only on the margins of that area. The center of it, there was no growth, or virtually no growth a year later.
Right.
And so the understory recovering first, I think it all comes up together, but in order for the hierarchy of the overstory to be dominant, the overstory has to germinate and regenerate faster than it gets snuffed out by the understory. Like that's the superpower of the hierarchical dominant apical species in any environment, is that they're going to be able to get up out of the ground at a height where they can start to photosynthesize before they get shaded out by the understory, which is also vigorous. But it's also like the understory provides a lot of soil stabilization. So then, flooding, landslides, mudslides, like all of that stuff can just destroy, depending on how severe the weather is that comes through. I mean, this is like the big thing down in LA with the fires and then the mudslides that come and whatnot, because you're talking about a much less moisture-rich environment that has a lot of chaparral scrub that can regenerate very easily after fires, but it's like not quite as rapid as more of a high moisture environment where you have a much more rapid growth and the resource to fuel that growth.
Yeah.
Fire ecology and that dynamic is super, super fascinating.
Yeah, right. There's definitely a whole chain of succession where it's like, those ground stories, and then I think a lot of times it's like at least how it is up in like the Seattle area, that'd be like the alders pop up first, and then those only have like a 70-year lifespan roughly, but they provide enough shade for then like your hemlocks and your red cedars to then have the right growing environment, because those don't want full sun when they're growing in ground. And so it's like, that's what they mean when they say like second and third gen forest. It's like the first gens, those alders that come in, provide the shade for the cedars, and then the cedars provide more shade for the hemlocks, being that third gen. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not a plant succession scientist, but that's my rough understanding of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it's different in every ecosystem and whatnot, but
Yeah. I really do feel like bonsai gives, if you dig into it enough, I feel like bonsai gives you a pretty good overview of knowledge that you can understand the broad concepts of ecology, of a fire ecosystem, of what you're talking about, succession expert. Yeah, and it's like, talking with Megan Midgley about sort of like soil biology, tree behavior, and climate change, which will be coming out in the new year.
Oh, cool.
It's a fascinating conversation. The depth of knowledge that she has in these systems of like, this is what happens when you add more nitrogen, and nitrogen is increasing in the atmosphere, was like, wow, that's crazy. But understanding that there are climatic conditions that are changing the ecology and understanding those broad changes, bonsai has been able to like help me understand that ecology and that science of it a lot more, to have at least a foothold on what's happening.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
the in-depth of this is how the nitrogen cycle in this species processes an increase in atmospheric nitrogen more than this species. That is really where science kind of puts the finger on the pulse of what exactly is happening on a molecular level, microbiological level. And that stuff is interesting to learn. I don't necessarily crave to know all of that. Like, I just need to. I need to understand the broad topic and the broad concept to really be able to play off of it in bonsai creation.
Well, I know you speak, Ryan, a lot of like how, the outdoors inspire you, and going to these different places give you the inspiration for like a lot of the trees you create. But do either of you guys feel like just being out in the outdoors in itself and being present out there gives you a better understanding of like the horticultural science or any of how like these plants work together with other plants and help you guys in your bonsai journey in any way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Here's the big one. Here's the big one for me. When we started testing with apical and seeing salt tolerance in dry climate trees and metal tolerance in temperate rainforest trees, all of a sudden it was like, oh, because there's always been this discussion of trees don't grow where they want to grow. Trees grow where they will not be out-competed by another species, which I accepted. I accepted that. That's a statement by educated individuals, but it to me, it missed the concise science of why plants grow where they grow, because the add-on to that is, yes, they're not being out-competed but they are also growing there because they are tolerant, which allows them to not be outcompeted.
Yeah, they
right?
have that
Yeah.
physiology to
Definitely.
withstand that.
That nutrient balance and the pressure triggers inside of the tree that cause catastrophic decline. It's like a Rocky Mountain juniper with 120 ppm of sodium is still going to be green and growing. You put 50 ppm of sodium in a hemlock and that thing is dead as a doornail, dead, right? But you have 250 ppm of aluminum in a hemlock and it's green and growing, and you get 80 to 100 ppm of aluminum in a Rocky Mountain juniper and it's dead, or it's covered in phomopsis, or it's riddled with insects and borers. Like, that was the breakthrough for me, to your question, Brandon, where it was like there was that science level, but I really think science is another entry point into bonsai creation and design. And I don't think a lot of people think about that, like the physiology of the tree, the mechanisms that are working allow you to play with those to execute and elicit different aesthetic responses, aesthetic to our perspective, but if you're an ecologist, different physiological responses. They're not even walking through the bristlecones with Brian Smithers. He's like, honestly, this is really the first time I've looked at an individual tree and appreciated it. I'm more focused on the ecosystem, and this is somebody who studied all of the bristlecone groves across Western United States.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what's your favorite tree? And he's like, I've never really thought about that. But he's like, now that I'm standing here looking at it, this is awesome. The way that I would have looked at it is, oh, look at the understory, look at this patch here, look at that grove over there, look at this hillside over here. That was where he oriented. We literally brought the attention to the tree to him as a bristlecone pine researcher. And I thought that was pretty special. You know?
That's super cool.
It was cool. It was very cool.
Yeah, I had a similar kind of transition where, like, I remember back when I was studying geology, it was like every time I saw a photo of the wilderness, I'm like looking to see if I can see the way that the beds are tipping in the mountainside, like the geologic beds, and like what are the mountains made out of? Why is that ridgeline so jagged? And then as I got into bonsai, now it's like the first thing I look at when I see a photo of the wilderness is trees and their forms, and then I look at the ridgelines in the background. Yeah, I think like what you're saying, like time out in nature, it's definitely affects how I do bonsai, and like it's kind of more so from like really studying trees in a whole new way of like seeing how where they're at in the landscape affects them, you know, like is it a tree that's on this like the small high point of a smaller ridge where the wind's coming over and hitting it there? Is it like in the understory and a different tree fell on it, knocked it, kind of tilted, and that's how you get a slanting form with some reiterations like, ooh, how could I play on that in a bonsai form? And kind of like the intermingling of species. Like I've always thought it'd be fun to do more mixed species compositions, but I understand the challenge of it once you get into a pot. So, but still like, okay, well, I see hemlocks and cedars near each other. Someday it would be cool to do some combination of those in a pot someday or so.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh, I mean, for me,
how much time do you spend in the wild?
Not as much as I'd like now.
California boy, have you been to all of the sites in California? Have you seen them all?
I've been to all of them except Lassen, and I think we talked about this this past year. That's the last spot on my list that I need to hit. From what I understand, it's the least visited national park in the country, which I'm like, why? But I guess it's kind of just off the beaten path, and
doesn't get a lot of publicity.
It doesn't.
I didn't even know it was a national park until 10 years ago when somebody said, "Have you ever been to Lassen?" And this is like North Cascades, also national park, not something I was aware of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I guess they have some pretty epic hot springs out there too that I was unaware of.
In Lassen?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, which seems pretty cool. Some geothermal kind of situations out there. So yeah, I mean, for me, I really, really feel like the time that I spent out in nature as a kid really helped me just now that I was never into bonsai then, and I didn't really know much about it. I'd seen it, I'd heard about it, but never really got into it at all. And now that I am into it, I'm realizing that just that time that I spent out there, makes me feel like, okay, well, I was here, I experienced this situation. I grew up camping in this area called Big Basin, and people get it confused with Great Basin. It's completely different, but Big Basin's just right outside the Bay Area, and a lot of redwood trees there, a lot of old growth redwood that went down. And
that was tough.
It is just amazing how that redwood goes down, and it doesn't break down like a lot of the other trees do in a lot of the other forests I've been in. They sit there, and they could be there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and then they hollow out on the ground, and then they create these different ecosystems. And if you've never seen it, it's something to see. I mean, it's the trees that are alive are very special, of course, but the ones that have gone down and how those have played a role in the ecosystem, and how those are, still part of these forests. It's really amazing.
They say the time it takes for a redwood to grow up is the time it takes for it to decompose once it falls down.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I did not know that. That is awesome.
Yeah. That's Lucy Kruhulis talked about that when we did the Mirai in the Wild in the redwoods. She said a 1,000-year-old redwood will take 1,000 years to decompose.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember crawling through them and at Memorial Park, which is, in between Pescadero and La Honda, I believe, just south of Half Moon Bay where I grew up. There's all these redwoods that are partially hollow. And I mean, there's areas where they have like playgrounds for kids, what they'd say a kid's playground, but there's no like infrastructure as far as like man-made stuff. It's just like old redwood stumps and hollows and an area for kids to like play in, and it's pretty cool.
Epic.
Yeah.
Epic. Big camp. When that thing burned, that was so devastating. That was such a special redwood grove. Most people never, it's a state park, but it's outside of Santa Cruz, and it had some epic, massive old growth redwood in there, and that thing just went up in smoke.
Is the closest kind of town Scotts Valley?
Scotts Valley.
Yeah.
That I spent so much time there in college because I lived in Santa Cruz for a summer. Spent a lot of time up on the top of 17, which is actually where I climbed my old growth redwood climb was on the top of 17 as well on a private piece of property, which was pretty epic. The grandfather tree.
Yeah. I find these days when I meet people that don't know bonsai or that aren't really aware of what it is or what us bonsai freaks, geeks are doing, and you talk to them a little bit, the people that have spent time in the outdoors seem to get it a little bit easier than the people that haven't.
Sure.
Not all the time, but just when they look at a tree that I have or that we're talking about, I feel like they just kind of understand in a way that a lot of people that don't spend time in the outdoors do.
Yeah.
Right. They've got that intrinsic connection to the value of nature.
Yeah. They're kind of like, as Ryan would say, like, oh, I see what you're kind of doing here.
I see what you're doing here. Yeah. Makes sense. I get it. Yeah. Maybe not my thing.
Exactly.
I'm more of a fly fisherman type or hiker mountaineering kind of vibe.
Yeah.
I don't want to fail to water something and have it die because I'm climbing 14ers or trying to hunt out the biggest rainbow trout. But I think I was thinking about something last night and this morning because in the transition back to Mirai, to living here, having been living in Portland quite a bit since the house was destroyed, and making the move back to a more I would say organic existence here. It's the comfort of living in Portland, the convenience, the lifestyle, the layout of, say, a house or a community, a neighborhood, whatever. When coming back to Mirai, I really felt like, God, this is kind of not as comfy. Mm-hmm. And for the first little bit, it was like, I'm going to go back to Portland. It's a little bit more dialed in, a little bit more comfortable. But then I knew that there was something here that had driven me to be here in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And as I've been here more and kind of been a lot more quiet and had a lot less stimulation and just immersed myself in the grit of Mirai again, the reconnection of it wasn't that I lost awareness of the weather and the seasons and the lifestyle of being really committed to a less urban organized existence out here. Mm-hmm. But I think I had forgotten that you kind of earn what you get out here, whereas in an organized city, neighborhood, a domesticated environment, it's earned on a more superficial level, not to be derogatory towards it, but it's earned through paper capital, being able to afford the comfort, whereas out here it's more earned through blue collar kind of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, taking the time to chop the firewood.
And start the fire and tend to the fire and grow the garden and take care of the trees and work with the elements, wrestling with them at times. I mean, I was up on the roof last week because I had gutters that were filled with Doug fir needles. I've cleaned the roofs like 7 times this fall, and yet they were clogged again. And it's the middle of the night. It's like 3 a.m, and the sound of the gutter overflowing woke me up, and I'm up on a ladder on the top of a roof at 3 a.m. by myself because the fam was back in Portland, and I'm thinking, if I fall off of this and break my neck, I'm going to sit here and basically freeze to death in the rain. But like, I need to get and like, it just sort of culminated because when I went back inside, I felt so innervated by having been out in the rain on the top of the roof, taking care of things that were the natural world, acting on my organized existence. And I really, in the past week or two, have made the shift of feeling like, I do appreciate and want this. Yeah. I almost feel like the comfort of that neighborhood and that lifestyle is doping my senses of living. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking about that on a more like existential level of spirituality and the wrestling match of religion and society, and religion potentially, I don't want to make any grand claims here, but I'm just thinking about the theme of religion and organized society being an organized spirituality, as opposed to when you are out in the environment working with nature, the spirituality comes from that embedment in that that situation that as an organism we have evolved to where we're at now, having endured and identified and having had to learn how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And John Muir famously wrote, like, the characteristic of a mountain man is not somebody who is gritty enough to endure the discomfort. It's somebody who develops the skill set to be able to make the wild environment comfortable so they can enjoy it. And that was, when I read that was a game changer recalibration of what it means to be an individual that can thrive in the wild environment, because it's not about toughness. It's about the intelligence and skill set you bring to the environment that allows you to exist in it with comfort, so you can cut through the impediments and get to that level of appreciation and enjoyment. Yeah. And that's completely reframed my existence at Mirai entirely. Nice. Because
awesome.
Yeah, because it is a level of spirituality, and that is something that I think we need as an organism. We need that existence or that awareness outside of ourselves.
Yeah, connection to the rest of the world and
Absolutely. Or
universe.
just connection to this floating marble that we live
Yeah,
on
right.
that needs our respect to perpetuate humanity and its ability to foster life and continued life generationally after us, right? I don't know why I felt like I needed to dive into that. Something that you said reminded me of that, Brandon. I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about spirituality a lot.
Oh yeah.
Because there was like,
Absolutely.
I have had an evolving decline in my optimism for literally like the past 5 years. And I haven't been able to put my finger on the pulse of what is leading to my felt inside of me like a catastrophic decline in optimism.
Yeah.
If you read the news and all that stuff and people are like, I don't read it, it's too hardcore. And it's like, I totally get that. But I think that's a symptom of the actual problem.
Right.
I think the actual problem is a loss of some degree of spirituality or existential relationship outside of ourselves that maybe organized religion provides to the domesticated environment, but maybe that existence and the skill set that we're losing with our touch with the natural world has depleted us of in the wild environment or the more rugged landscapes where we actually go to like fill our well spiritually and on a soul, like on like a depth of soul level, you know. And I think a lot of people probably feel that declining optimism and an increasing fear and an impending doom of sorts, right? Like if you read any, okay, phosphorus is 50 years from being gone. How are we going to grow plants to feed ourselves? Atmospheric nitrogen is increasing, and consequently, we're experiencing another mass die-off of, apex species, flora and fauna. Governments across the world are failing. Economy is, challenging as ever. Globalization. Who knows what our relationship with China and like you can start to spiral pretty freaking easy. Social media, kids are, it's just like, oh my gosh, holy cow, yeah. But there has been kind of making that shift back to Mirai and going through this next metamorphosis that I've experienced on a personal level, having put my finger on the pulse and recognizing kind of where I personally need to be to maintain the optimism that I want to carry with me on a daily basis, just as an individual and what I bring to the world, and hope it reflects back to me.
Right.
I really needed to tap back into that deep appreciation of the rugged beauty and how I enjoy that again. And it meant separating myself from the comforts and the, I think, doping or complacency of organization that
the ease of life
makes everything comfortable again, on a level that makes you passive, makes you complacent, makes you entitled to a degree of and expecting of all of these things to be taken care of for you, and the stress of it not being taken care of for you because the realities of life still exist causes that loss of optimism, or at least for me it did.
Yeah, I've been having a pretty similar thing as well, where it's like, definitely have been feeling some existential dread, and occasionally just go on these rants with a homie, just like, oh man, everything's, but then have been thinking, like, also noticing, like, compared to like other times in my life where it's like both days I'm off a week, I would be out in the mountains and really submersing myself on hiking trails and camping trips and things like that. And the last handful of years, the amount of time I've spent outside and in the wild has substantially been decreased. And it's like, I have a strong feeling that next summer I'm going to be trying a lot harder to get out there and spend more time in the wilder areas, and I've even been considering some, like, seeing if I would be able to figure out some winter camping trips, because I love that ruggedness and that discomfort, because it does kind of put you back in humanity and what's going on and like what it takes to just survive and the specialness of life on this planet, like you're saying. And so it's like, I think as I get more back into that wilder, more outdoor spaces, I'm hoping that will help. But
definitely. Have either of you guys spent much time out in the outdoors, like solo, like by yourselves? Like have you got, like, I know a lot of people go out and, you know, they do camping trips and backpacking, they go with a friend or, you know, this and that, but I don't know, have you ever gone out there like alone for like more than one night?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know Brock and I have both spent a lot of time in the outdoors solo. Have you?
Only once or twice, and only for about 1 or 2 days max. One of my goals in the near future is to do like a 3 to 5 day solo trip, and
Nice.
just kind of get a little more grounded and just a little more in tune with myself. I feel like the 1 or 2 times I did do it, I feel like the level of awareness is so much higher, and the amount of things I think about and the things that come up really don't surface the way they do when you're with other people.
Yeah, life is completely different when you're spend some time alone in the wilderness or in the real world too. It's like it's crazy how different it is. Like I haven't done too many like multi-night things. I've done a couple alone, but a lot of mine were like fitting it in where I could, where I'd leave after work and go straight to the mountains, camp that night, maybe hiking a bit, and then camp the next night and stuff. And I'd always try to like not look at the time, not worry about like, oh, I need to wake up at sunrise and get this done or go to that spot. It's like, I have a map. I know generally where I want to go, but I'm just going to do it at my own pace. Kind of like wake up, see like, okay, am I hungry yet? Do I want to pack up tents and make breakfast and leave right now? Or do I want to sit here for a little bit and just kind of like go at your own pace, but like completely on just like, oh, how am I feeling right now? And highly recommend it. It's the best.
Yeah, because when we're with other people, you're like, most people, they're thinking like, oh, they're asking their friend, partner, whoever they're with, oh, are you hungry? Should we eat now? Should we do this? Maybe certain people are trying to accommodate other people or make it a little more comfortable for the other person. And when you're by yourself, it's like you just kind of do what's good for you in that moment, in that, you know, time. And you're just more, I feel like, dialed in to just the self-awareness of everything. And I think that's super powerful and something I think I want to experience more of.
The time that I've spent in the wild by myself has largely been around collecting trees. In college, I actually organized my last year at college to have classes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then I had Thursday through Sunday off, and I would head to the Sierras almost every weekend. And would be out there for 4 days, sleeping in the back of my truck, collecting trees. And part of this whole discovery of this life that I sought to lead, that has taken a minor detour the past 5 years, was really going collecting this fall. And that was so big to reacquaint myself with being out there and enjoying it, and the struggle and the physicality, the discomfort, but also just the undeniable appreciation of the environment and the uniqueness of the trees and the landscape. And I recognized I had really lost a lot of touch with that thing that most people start doing bonsai, buying a tree, being gifted a tree, going to the nursery and finding a tree. I started bonsai collecting trees. That was the beginning of it for me, was collecting trees with my dad in the Rockies. And through college, that was what drove me. I always thought that was actually going to be my bonsai pursuit, was being a professional collector first. And then I realized in Japan, I can't make my own ceramics, make my own stands, collect my own trees, and have and
Perform at the highest.
I can't. None of them. Yeah, I won't be good. I won't be as good as I want to be at any of them. And more than that, I won't be able to make a living.
Right.
And then Randy Knight came along, and here's this guy. I respect his approach, his ethics, the quality. He needs support. We can work together. And I collected intermittently over the first 15 years at Mirai, but really this fall was the first time that I went back deep into the landscape and felt like that fire and that connection again. And I recognized, okay, I've lost this, but it's nothing that is not capable of being regained, and in fact moving forward in its impact on me. And I realized that's just a commitment for me that I've got to prioritize over everything else. This fall, I recognized I have got to prioritize making these not irresponsible from the perspective of I have the responsibility of operating a business and an operation and taking care of these trees. It's not irresponsible from that perspective, but when you capture that moment of undeniable passion and enthusiasm to go immerse yourself in the landscape and find a really special tree, and you sometimes do something out of the ordinary to get that done, that has, I guess, over the past 15 years become, in my own mind, an irresponsible act, and I'm recognizing that I quantified that is actually the thing I need to prioritize and be doing to keep myself
keep your fire burning
alive. Yeah,
right.
Alive and willing and wanting to put the effort in and all of those other fronts that are demanded to continue to survive on an economic level as a bonsai professional. Like if I'm not prioritizing being out in the landscape, I might as well hang it up.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a reinvigorating thing. And you could tell when we were out there with you, you're like a kid in the candy store and so amped for days after.
Yeah. It was that the contagion of the enthusiasm was.
Next week, you're like, should we go again?
Yeah. And I did. I took Taft. I was like, Taft, you want to go to the mountains? Shockingly, he was like, yeah. And I'm giddy up, let's go. We just got in the truck at 2 p.m. We had 3.5 hours of daylight. Took us an hour and a half to get to the mountains. 2 hours of daylight. Found 2 great trees. Was out there with my kid. Dude, you can't put a price on that. That's the bounty of the outdoors, man. It's just not the economic bounty, not the financial bounty, the bounty was the experience.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'm so, young in my bonsai journey, but I hear how you talk about the trees that you collected when you were, very young, and you still have a lot of them today. I feel like the few trees I've collected, they might not be like world-class trees, or they might not be the best trees of that species out there yet. But there's just a special connection and a special thing about, I think, collecting your own tree and then making something with it. And I find that, you've said, Ryan, that, the trees that you have collected when you were young that you still have today, they kind of have a soft spot for you in the bonsai space.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's because these trees are time capsules. So looking at that tree takes me back to that moment when I was 12, when I found it, and the story of collecting it and what it's gone through to get it to this point and everything else. It's all of that gets unlocked looking at that tree every time. And not like I sit and look at it and I go through this brain bank of images, but if I really slow down and look at it, it's like, wow, old friend, we've been together for a long time. You have been with me through this entire journey. And the nostalgia component of that is undeniable. It really is undeniable.
And what's so interesting about that as well is someday when that tree goes to another caretaker, they may or may not know the history of that tree and how it was collected or how it was special to you. But even if they just like the tree in a way where they want to be the new caretaker of it and they appreciate what the previous person has done for it and they carry that on, then they're going to have their own connection to it in a different way, but that lives on in the tree itself.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but the passing of the story, I think it's something that Japan has done very well with their generational approach, with the generational practice of bonsai, or with the provenance and documentation of history that has gone along with the trees, where in the Western world, there's, not to say that trees aren't commoditized in Japan, they're absolutely commoditized. And I think right now, bonsai culture in Japan has commoditized, just to stay alive, they've had to commoditize their history in the sale of pots, stands, trees, that I don't really know how you necessarily recover from that when you commoditize that and it's gone.
Right.
And obviously that is how a bonsai professional makes a living. So can you really, or can you argue with it? Can you fault them for it? No, I don't think so. We're all trying to survive in the modern world, but somewhere in between making a living and surviving and still maintaining that moral, ethical value system of the time capsule of the tree being preserved and passed on, even if a Japanese tree leaves Japan, how does that provenance live on with it and maintain its value? It's going to another culture. Is it going to be the same thing? No, you have to relinquish that. But can we? Are there attempts? Is that possible? And I think as bonsai practitioners in the modern era, it's really wise and important to be thinking about bonsai on that level. I think that's part of the maturation of the Western bonsai community. Is I think that provenance is starting to carry value, like value on an individual sort of level of the bonsai practice, as well as an economic value. The history and provenance of a tree is starting to create economic value, which is good. I think that's a positive thing, because now that history, in there being economic value and awareness of the value in history, it is being passed on.
Right.
And that's of critical importance. And that Mirai has a lot of historical trees. We've got one of John Naka's original trees.
Yeah, Kenoshita pygmy.
The Kenoshita, the Kenoshita cypress, the Hollywood juniper from John and Francis Platt. Got a Harry Harao tree here. There's a number of really historical pieces for Western bonsai that are I have to put those trees above every other tree in the garden.
Yeah, I mean the Mary Madison.
Oh, the Mary Madison
Wow.
bald cypress, absolutely.
Wow. And then like the Steve Wilcox pygmy.
Oh,
I mean,
sure,
gosh.
sure, yeah,
Right.
yeah. How about the shore pines from Dave and Donna Burnett?
Oh gosh, so good.
Neither one of all of these people we've just talked about and their trees, none of them are with us anymore. That is
Right.
their lineage.
Yeah.
That is the retention of the memory of their existence and contribution. It's in these trees, and all of us want to know that we have some perpetuation of our existence, that we have some degree of value that we've contributed that will be remembered. I think that's a human trait to not want to be your existence to be insignificant and you're forgotten when you're gone, or remembered only by your family members for one or two generations, and then maybe not even spoken about again, or maybe just a brief mention in memory. It's like bonsai is that thing for us, for our community, for bonsai practitioners, that has such a significant ability to live on and pass on your passion and have that tree carry that continuation and perpetuation. I think it's critically important that we continue to document and value that. It really does it allows bonsai to give people a peace of mind in what they had to contribute and what will be remembered and passed on. It actually gives people the ability to let go of that apprehension or fear of being forgotten.
Right.
Yeah.
If our community values that. And what a gift. What a gift, because most of the world is going to have that apprehension and leave this current state of existence without any knowledge that they will be remembered.
Right.
Like, I've never really thought about it like this on this level, but it certainly feels significant right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's cool being part of bonsai at this time in the Western world, where it's like we're starting to get to the point where we do have provenance on our trees and stuff. Like, because I mean, I'm sure like in the early 60s and stuff and 70s, or what, like, there were John Naka trees being made, but it was like that was only hands-on, and now we've got John Naka trees that were then cared for by Ben Oki for a little bit before ending up at the museum, and it's like, oh, that's just stacking on, and it's really beautiful to see that and be a part of it.
Totally agree. Yeah, Mr. Kimura used to talk with me about that when we would look at historical trees. He'd be like, you're part of a group of very special people that are going to have a imprint on this tree, and this tree has evolved for the better or worse is not the question. As long as the tree continues to exist, it carries that evolution in every hand that touches it, whether they improve it or reduce its economic or visual quality is still putting a historical marker on that tree that will live with it. And you join that when you work on a historical tree. You become a part of that story. And that's really, if you just sit back and digest that a little bit, that's really, really special.
Oh, yeah.
Very special.
Super profound.
I've also been thinking, because I've talked to people and they're like, oh, we'll all be gone someday. The trees will be gone someday, this and this and that. And, for me, I feel like, honestly, I talked about this with my mom a little bit recently, and it was like, okay, but what is it doing for us now while we're here? And she kind of made a comment that was pretty fascinating and interesting to me, in the sense that, do you think bonsai, helps you live longer, or do you think that helps you move through life with more purpose? And I my answer was, I think yes. Whether it's the motor skills, whether it's the wiring, whether it's the pruning, whether it's the focus, whether it's the constant want and need of the dedication to just keep this thing maintained in a way that you want it to be, or that it's the best for the tree's health. I definitely think that keeps humans going. There's a lot of people that have, gotten sick, and we've lost a lot sooner than we probably should have, that love bonsai and that have been working on their trees. But for the most part, I truly want to believe that it keeps us going as humans.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for purpose, and there's a lot to be said for selfless acts perpetuating our life, right? Self-sacrifice for the good of the trees is uncomfortable. It's certainly uncomfortable, but what a might be a little conflicted to say a noble pursuit, but I think it is a noble pursuit. Absolutely, to sacrifice your own comfort and some of the creature luxuries that we have to make sure we perpetuate these organisms, and that they carry forward all of those positive things. When the heat dome hit, and I had put the John Naka into the Jonathan Cross that spring, and the heat dome hit in June, the John Naka turned really brown. And I was like, oh my gosh, this can't happen. And that tree survived, came back, looks great. But that was a real like, whoa, that was almost ground zero, and it's like those moments in bonsai. That was one part of Japan with the apprenticeship where feeling the weight of the responsibility of caring for historical trees and getting up at 3 a.m. when it was snowing and nobody was telling me to get up to go to the garden to make sure the trees were okay was just, there was like an obligation to Mr. Kimura as my master, but more than that, what I think the breakthrough that had to be made as an apprentice is that was an obligation to the trees.
Right.
And if you don't have that, then you're not, if you're doing it to avoid getting in trouble versus doing it because it's for the sake of the trees, those are two different mindsets that lead to two different outcomes of the path in bonsai.
Right.
So if you're there for the trees because that's what you're valuing, I think that mindset probably separated the apprentices that have had success from the apprentices that have either failed or failed to have success.
Right.
When I think back on it and thinking about that moving forward, I think that continues to be the aspect of bonsai that's very challenging for interpersonal relationships with spouses, kids, friends, community, where it's like, I just can't be there right now because I've got these other things that need me that I've committed to, and without me will suffer.
Right.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
like, that's a difficult wrestling match right there.
Absolutely.
I had a girlfriend in college who was like, if there was a fire and you had to save one thing, I don't feel confident that I would be the thing that you would save.
You have feet to walk out of the fire.
That's kind of what I said. I was like, listen, that's that right there. That is something, that's a conversation you probably don't want to have with me. Like, I don't know that I can offer the kind of reassurance that you're looking for.
Yeah, right.
Now, is
You want
that
me to
different? I've got a family. I've got 4 boys. It's like that would be. It's a position I hope I never find myself in. But
Absolutely.
it is to speak to the degree of dedication that it takes to be a steward of these trees on a continuum, and to the risks and the necessities that it takes to perpetuate these trees. I mean, when you see trees that are 200 or 300 years old in a container in Japan, it's like, that means for 200 or 300 years on a daily basis, somebody was making the decision to put that tree before themselves. And that is
Right.
because one day of lacking that dedication in 300 years and that tree is no longer in existence.
Yep.
I find that to be the most respectable and completely awe-inspiring aspect of trees that are that old. Not the fact that they're that old, but the fact that somebody did not screw up and made the decision to put that tree before themselves for 300 years.
Yeah, I mean, is there another art or another thing in this world? I've tried to think about it that people have done over the course of history where they are handling something that's alive that lasts that long and that's passed down, generation over generation, and I haven't thought of one.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen Dune?
No.
Have you seen Dune? The new
Yeah.
ones?
Uh-huh.
The palm trees that are out in the desert that needed water,
yeah.
and then they eventually get burned, but the caretaker of the palm trees giving them water was talking about how they shouldn't exist, and they did exist because everybody valued those.
Took that time.
Yeah, I've always wondered, you have the yews around some of the really ancient structures in the UK that have grown into the buildings and around the doorways and stuff, and there are these critical trees and culturally significant trees. And I even think about the original prints of the Bible and some of these historical texts, which are not living organisms, but have demanded a lot of sacrifice for people to preserve these through wars and through all of the issues of humanity that have jeopardized them, however many hundreds or thousands of times over the course of human history and stuff. But is there another art form? I can't think of it. Preservation of historical paintings, certainly during World War II, and finding a lot of the Nazi stolen paintings that continue to be found.
Right.
And
it's wild.
that stuff is real. Some of the jewels and like the valuable markers of humanity and stuff, but like a living thing like that.
Yeah, it's like a daily need. It's pretty rare, if ever.
Yeah, I would say
That's
so.
Outside of bonsai.
And then I kind of think of like the ceiling of the life, of the trees, like the bristle cones, they can live, I think you were saying 4,000 or 5,000 years.
Well, that's how they could live longer.
They could live longer.
They just
but
haven't.
They haven't. And then some of these other trees that we have, we won't be around for it. But I mean, I feel like the possibility of a tree being able to live 1,000 years in a container is definitely possible. Definitely possible.
The rarity of that, like if you say, okay, how many seedlings of a bristlecone pine live to 5,000 years old? You're talking about like what, 1 in a trillion? I mean, 1 in a whatever's after a trillion, a gajillion.
Yeah,
right? Like 1 in a billion, whatever, right? Like you're talking about the exception of 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 the exception, blah 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 blah, right? So like for that to happen, that tree being prioritized and valued for that. I would hope we would have the appreciation if that's happened.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because what in Japan you said 200 to 300 years old. There are some of the trees, and then I know that Japan gifted us a like 200 and some year old white pine that's now I think 300 years old that we have at the national.
Yeah, that survived
collection.
Hiroshima.
That survived, multiple wars and stuff. So I'm not sure what the oldest tree is that is a bonsai, but I'd have to guess that, right in the low 300 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I would think so. I would think so. Right. And even in terms of when those are documented to where they are now, several have been lost, and World War II wiped a lot of those out. And, there's a lot more suiseki that were owned by Ieyasu Tokugawa and some of the original shoguns and daimyos of Japan than there are bonsai, obviously. And some of the historical bonsai were planted in the ground, like down at the Gold Pavilion in Kyoto. There's a massive pine in the ground that was a bonsai that was planted prior to the war that's now a full-size niwaki and stuff like that. So there's really interesting and cool things to talk about when you get into this level of like pontification about just the profundity of this art form. But man, it gets, the longer time goes, the rarer it gets to find trees that have made it. And who knows, in China, some of the pinjing, and I think that is a largely undocumented, because they've gone through major historical cleansing at times in their history. But there's probably some pinjing in China that if somebody had the whole lineage of that tree would dwarf or usurp what has happened in Japan. I don't know that for sure, but I can hypothesize, right? It's probably for the fact that they find a prehistoric species like dawn redwood in some rural prefecture in China of a tree that's thought to be extinct, and now it's a largely distributed nursery available species that's refound its footing in our modern horticultural world, it kind of speaks to the same thing, and the potential in China being such a large landmass with such an old culture, and the origin of this practice, that there could be things in China that just we have no concept or awareness of, and nobody really does.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, imagine what was in the Library of Alexandria. Imagine what was there before that burned.
For real.
The loss of history and knowledge, and oh man, that stuff. That's as unfathomable as the ocean and space to me. Is the lost documentation of human history over the course of time.
For real. I think about that, where it's just like, man, to think like where we'd be if we didn't take the time to burn all the books and things like that.
Sure.
Like,
or global catastrophic event. I mean, the Younger Dryas. There are hypotheses that North America was the most early inhabited continent, and that it might have the longest history, but it's all buried, 100 feet in the ground or whatever. That's another aspect. Going to Rome and walking through the promenade and seeing how far below the modern level of society all of that is, like the undeniable annual accumulation of organic matter that buries human existence was shocking to see. Looking down into that pit of all of these historical buildings in Rome, and it's just like, wow.
Right.
And seeing the drawings of it being used on like a agronomical level to house horses and cows and goats back in the day and stuff. And it's buried almost up to the roof, and it's like a barn, and now it's this remnant of this amazing culture that just sputtered out as organized society will.
So do you think, with that being said, that like trees like General Sherman or something, like a really famous redwood, like, do you think that the base 10 or 20 feet below that they've measured is that much bigger then?
Well, I think if we didn't see trees that had fallen over and have an awareness of their root structure and base, then you could probably... There are those drawings. I don't know if you've ever seen the drawings of like the root system below ground being as deep and as broad as the canopy in the tree above ground. And those drawings are very romantic, but they've largely been discounted as not the reality.
Yeah.
But certainly if we hadn't seen and accumulated the knowledge, that would be a natural assumption for sure. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's trees out there that have been buried over and over and over again and have a depth of existence and presence that we're unaware of. That's probably unfathomable. Sure, I think that's totally realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. The amount of wonder and fascination that can come from the little peephole of bonsai. This is my view on the world. It's when I was a kid and we would stay in a hotel, I would stand at the door and look out of the peephole into the hallway. And you'd see people with that fisheye view of the peephole walking by. And I remember being in Japan inside of the cinder block walls of Mr. Kimura's garden, and there would be, he was right by the base of a Shinkansen, a bullet train. And every time the bullet train would go by, I would look at the train and wonder what one person on that train, what their life was like. And to your point of being out in the wild, I remember my first solo backpacking trip in the Sierras before I started college. I was sleeping out in the middle of the mountains, and like a commercial airline flew overhead, and I was thinking, where are those people coming from? Where are they going? What is their reality? What is, what is their existence? What does that look like? And that has a name. That has a name, that like thought process of that, when you recognize the profound, infinite presence of lives lived. It's called yeah, I'll think of it. Anyways, yeah, I learned this term from one of my kids, actually. I'll think of it. Anyways, yeah. That ability to extrapolate from that little peephole, this like more massive wondering of reality. That's what Bonsai's done for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a wide world out there, and to think about it, it's crazy when you start to think about how many different, one of my favorite bands has a song, and one of their lyrics is like, everybody's on a different day of their lives, which is kind of like touching on that same thing, like even though it's Thursday for all of us right now as we're recording, it's like, we're all in such a different stage and part of our lives, even if you're compared to the person you spend every day with, it's like just all factors considered, we're all just doing our own thing.
I have to be able to pull it back though, like I can't sit out in that infinite expanse for long.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like walking around with your head in the clouds, kind of like I've got to pull it back to what can I do today.
Yeah.
To continue to feel good about today. So I do have to zoom out and then zoom back in and kind of take that wonder and bring it back, or else it becomes too overwhelming and I feel too lost in the sea of infinite possibilities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's amazing what plants and trees have done for humans over the course of the past, few thousand years. And just, I guess maybe plants and trees haven't been containerized for that long, but whenever that started, like what that's just done for humanity in general, and like the different types of joys and, the happiness and stuff that brings, just humans in today's world.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm stuck on trying to remember that word. God, I hate it when this happens. It's gonna occupy my mind, and then I'm just gonna be walking somewhere doing something pointless, and I'm gonna be like, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we had sat down today to talk about Korean Hornbeams.
Yeah.
And look at where we went. I feel like this happens every time.
Right.
Yeah.
We just go deep.
And unless when Brian Smithers and I were sitting down talking in the bristlecones in Great Basin, we would start out talking about a bristlecone pine, like, oh, you can see the deadwood here, and this is caused by blowing ice and all of this, and then geological degradation, and this tree fell over, and that's really, and it was like, yeah. And then by the end of the conversation, we sat down and had like 5 or 6 recorded conversations, which I don't know where those are, but I'm going to find them because they were freaking awesome. And that guy is amazing. But it always ended with like, what is the purpose of life?
Yeah, right.
That's always sitting by these 3,000-year-old trees. We're like, what is the meaning of life?
Yeah, right. What are we doing here?
We never were able to escape that theme sitting by the bristlecone pines. But
interesting.
Talking about our draw, which when I see people that aren't drawn to trees in the natural world, I'm always like, what happened? But I recognize not everybody had the same opportunity to connect with it at a point where it was like going to become a part of their psyche.
Yeah.
But I always think back to just like the primate mind, and trees were everything for existence: safety, food, home, shelter, community. Trees were it. So it makes sense to me if you go back all the way to the roots of our primal mind and like the very base DNA genetic strands of our identity. Trees were at the center of that.
Right.
And still to this day, I do find it disconcerting that we can so effortlessly cut down these markers of time and not recognize that, like, we don't get those back. Yeah, they're a tremendous resource for sure.
Yeah.
But there also is an obligation to forego the resource of harvesting the immediate economic product for the longevity of what they contribute to humanity.
Oh yeah.
I've been seeing a lot of coverage of the old growth being logged again up in Canada.
Yeah.
I know there's attempts to open up old growth logging again in North America. In fact, maybe they have. I don't know.
Right.
It's really, really scary because it's like, oh God, if that goes, there's just so much that goes with it.
Yeah, that would be
beyond.
wild.
But you also can't knock the necessity to what is the necessity to progress that's kind of built into our DNA as well. Like, is it going to take us to a better place? Is there some outcome of this? Because in our short-sighted perspective of our immediate time and looking at these organisms, trees, at their excessive and extensive age, like, if they are going to be sacrificed, I do want to try and find some sort of foothold in the belief that maybe there is an outcome to progress that leads us to a better place, and these trees were a facilitator of some sort. I don't believe that now. I can't see that now, but like, if it's going to happen inevitably and the powers that be make those decisions, I hope for planet Earth, humanity, etc., that what comes from it does take us to a place of evolution, thought, and progress that justifies or makes it worth it.
Right.
And I don't find that to be something I can like confidently believe in. I really don't.
Yeah.
But there's so much that if anything that we can learn from history, we don't really know where we're headed and what's going to happen.
Exactly. And it might be one of those things where it's not as like direct, like the tree was then used for this, which then helped us get there. And it might be one of those things where it's like that the loss of those inspired a generation to step it up, you know? And like, that was something we kind of talked about a lot with like trail work in Colorado. It's like, you know, we were making trails, and a lot of us are like, wait a second, we kind of have a lot of hiking trails already in Colorado. Do we really need to be making more and giving people more access to this wilderness area? Because let's be honest, like, the wilderness is like, even hikers and stuff have an effect on being out there and stepping on those fine tundra mountain landscapes and stuff. And so like, but it's like on top of that, it's like when you get out there and experience it, that's what then inspires you to then protect it. And so it's like I've met a handful of people who are like, I don't get anybody who goes out in the mountains. It sounds cold, wet, and miserable. Like, that sounds terrible. It's like, okay, well, also comparing those two mindsets, they're also probably a lot less likely to then care about deforestation and care about protecting those places and stuff. So it's like, it might not be a direct one-to-one of we lost this tree for this gain, but I think there's got to be, like you're saying, some good that will happen and inspire some folks to do better.
Yeah. Let's dig into the Korean Hornbeam.
Let's do it.
Let's dig into the Korean Hornbeam. I want to dig into the Korean Hornbeam in the Kokufu albums because I have completely fallen in love with the species. Mm-hmm. But I think the Korean Hornbeam kind of like walks this narrative that we're talking about, primarily from the perspective that a lot of the great iwashide collected from South Korea that built our reference point of the species as a cornerstone of the broadleaf bonsai model no longer exists. Like, those forests were collected out. The landscape has changed. Things have evolved, and these imported collected Korean hornbeam into Japan that really created such significant representations of the species. These are the last of the existence of this era in South Korea's landscape. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of capacity to talk about all of the conflict in Asia that led to occupation and some of the things that have happened. And I'm not educated enough to necessarily talk about all of that. I know that it's a conflicted subject matter that I am not prepared to dip my toe into. But I think that we can look at the Korean hornbeam as a thematic species that has found its way into bonsai culture that does have this breadth of significance in bonsai culture, and just kind of like break down the species, hopefully on a more optimistic level of its beauty and its merit, and some of the things that it's contributed to the bonsai approach. So I'm looking at Kokufu album number 73, which I just want to say I haven't picked up the Kokufu albums in a solid like 5, 6, 7 years. I used to go through them with students. We would analyze and assess design, harmony, tension, dynamic, handling of all of the, as kind of the best reference for refined bonsai. Like, you can really assess design well in a Kokufu album, but I haven't picked them up in a long time. And I picked up 73 off the shelf, which I think the 70s, is particularly the low 70s, is the highlight of Japanese bonsai and its pinnacle. Personally, that is a very personal opinion. But I'm on page 119, and it was interesting to look at this because this particular hornbeam here, this is a reference hornbeam for me because this is a hornbeam from Mr. Kimura's garden that I pruned on an annual basis, that I cared for in the back of the garden because Mr. Kimura did not house all of the broadleafs in the front of the garden ever. So like, nobody really saw broadleaf trees at Mr. Kimura's because they were all in the back, but we did have them. And this tree is such an exceptional, powerful, pine formed for sure, right? This is like a pine style, traditional, orthodox designed bonsai, apex centered over the base, but the merit of the base and the trunk and the transition of taper and the quality of evolution of the branches. And I think more than anything, this singular tree in that dark blue rectangle antique Chinese container sort of single-handedly taught me about the color saturation and color value of masculine and feminine. Like, that is what I think of When I think about a powerful deciduous tree and a pot that complements that powerful deciduous tree, this is the tree that comes to mind when I begin that discussion every single time. This is the tree container combo that I look at and I say, that is how you match a container to a masculine broadleaf tree. Yeah. Color, value, shape, form, etc. Tree container combo, I think, set the foundation for my understanding of container pairing.
Nice. I mean, Carpinus is probably one of the top species in bonsai for like desirability, from what I understand. I mean, just the compact leaves, the way it tapers, like the 4 seasons that it brings, like just all of those things really.
The muscling, the striations in the bark, the craggliness,
in the branching and ramification.
Yeah, because they do naturally zig and zag with the alternating bud form, so that you can prune in. And this tree has relatively, I would say, it was harvested as a stump. In the center of the tree, you can see where there's like a big wound that's been pasted, and the branches, so that wound is right here, but the branches are relatively straight. So it tells me that when it was harvested, all of the generational hierarchical branches were cut back to the trunk, and that it was largely regrown from a stump, which I think was kind of practical collection methods.
Yeah, pretty standard.
Back in the day. And I really hope that we're evolving. I've tried to be, there's a post on our Instagram that was from a forum QA on an American hornbeam that I thought had been collected and then grown out in the ground. And I talked about in the post we made on social media, it was basically this really significant opportunity to talk about the merit of collecting broadleaf deciduous material and then growing it out in the ground to heal it, improve the transition of taper from your primary to secondaries, which you can't refine a tree growing it in the ground, but you can certainly rapidly heal and merge primary development in the ground and grow the trunk and grow the new apex where it's been chopped and seamlessly blend the cuts on the hierarchical primary structure that hopefully were maintained if they offered value coming out of the field.
Right.
But this is a tree that I would love to have seen what it looked like in the ground.
Right.
And I would love to have seen what was cut.
Right.
Yeah. Because it feels as though it was cut back to a structure that was trying to emulate traditional design and then grown into that traditional design. But I wonder what opportunity it offered to be a unique hornbeam with hierarchical structure left intact.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely something that I really love about the hornbeams. And just like when you see a good deciduous tree that has some branch that's like a third of the thickness of the trunk, and it's like a lot of people would probably cut that off and regrow it for maximum ramification as tight as possible. But it's like the amount of character and uniqueness that deciduous trees have when you leave some strong, powerful branching is like, oh, that's going to actually make me stop. But it's like, oh, nice, another one. Oh, nice, another one with good ramification. Oh, nice, another one. It's like, oh, wow, look at that cool branch, and look at that over there. Like, that's unique. Like,
yeah, special. That I feel like the big hedge maple that we have that's been on the stream several times that has that branch that's like over half the girth of the trunk.
Right.
The big discussion in that was when we styled it on the stream the very first time, like back in 2017, everybody said you should cut that off. Or when we did the Adam Johnson linden, and it's got the big branch on the right that comes out and almost makes a 90-degree turn, and the feedback from the community is why aren't you cutting that off, or why aren't you cutting that back? And my whole stance with broadleaf deciduous trees is that hierarchical branching is age. That is the representation of age. They don't get old craggly bark. You're not going to be able to push them into this grand degree of asymmetry with remnants of what was, because the dead wood will rot and deteriorate and you'll have hollows instead, and that is a value system. But that hierarchical branch, that is your story. Yeah. That is your narrative for that tree. And so seeing so many broadleaf deciduous handled by cutting everything back to a 2-inch stub, and all of your older branches start their secondary at the same location. I'll never forget being in Satsuki class at El Dorado Bonsai in the early 2000s. And I had this azalea that had been dug out of the fields in Japan and shipped over. And it was the first time that it had ever been pruned. And Tatsumori Gondo was the teacher, and he's like, yeah, we want to prune these heavy branches back now. So I cut all of the branches, no matter their diameter, back to the exact same length on the trunk over the entire tree. And he came and he was like, oh, that's good. That's good. That's what we want. And I remember looking at it and thinking after I had done it, I feel like I just screwed up somehow, but I'm not quite sure how.
Yeah, right. You're getting reassurance, but it doesn't feel better looking at it.
It feels like I've done something that's made every branch the same length and the same. Like even then, I was starting to have these inclinations of like, oh, I don't know if I did this tree justice in what I've just done to it. You know, and now being where I'm at with Mirai and leaning into the broadleaf form, I am sure that I totally fucked that tree up. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, I fucked that tree up.
I removed all of its character.
And then it's like, well, how, well, then where do you make that cut? And it's like, now you have to develop the thought process of, where do you make that cut? Okay, this is the thickest branch on the tree. Technically, that starts to become the longest branch, but does it have value in the movement? No. Okay, so then let's decide the length of it where we capture the most movement, and when it loses that aesthetic value in the movement, that's where you cut. You know, so instead of hierarchy, like in a trunk, the tallest tree in a group planting should be the thickest tree. The thickest branch doesn't necessarily have to be the longest branch if it doesn't have interest through and through, but we want to maintain the interest as far as we possibly can before we transition and build out movement in the subsequent growth that's going to follow that we have more control over, you know? And so like, that's really helped me form my broadleaf approach. Is like the value system around hierarchical branches and an awareness of the fact that these things are what give that tree a special feature or a character, and how you maintain and utilize that in design. And everybody's got to form their own value system around that. But sometimes looking at the Kokufu albums is as informative of what not to do. More often than not, it's informative of the pinnacle of how something has been handled. Let's just be really clear about that. But there are also examples that you can look at and you say, yeah, I don't know that was handled to the best of its capacity. And seeing the forum QA has been so powerful because people will post on there of trees that they've dug. And I think we've been able to have a positive impact on preserving character in the branches of trees that are being dug in the broadleaf form by saying, hey, let's not cut it all back to a multi-trunk form having the same height on every stump cut. Leave more and think about the hierarchy. Keep that interest in the hierarchical branches. And I've seen a positive impact even in people handling their broadleaf material in the forum QA that's creating more character and more future potential by that becoming a talking point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, they just have such, I mean, the how beautiful the bark is on the Korean Hornbeam, as well as the subtle fissures that are, you know, in that bark. And then for me, it gives such a mature vibe. It gives such a just epic kind of feel for a bonsai. It's almost like one of the perfect species for it.
Yeah.
I don't know of a lot of other broadleaf stuff that create that type of feel and vibe and mature kind of tree with just the features that it provides.
Well, here's the other thing. Korean Hornbeam, to a large degree, holds you accountable for when you make a mistake. Because when you cut them, they do not heal. So you really have to weigh out, do I want to cut that back to the trunk? Because I know that that's not going to be something that's really going to heal. Big primary branch removal. It's like, you want to sit there with that scar for the rest of your life? Because that's what you're talking about right now. And it's like Korean Hornbeams, like, you can do that and I will still grow. But you're going to have to look at that for the rest of my life. Do you want to do that or not? And I don't think necessarily everybody thinks about that. The same thing with a Japanese maple. A Japanese maple will heal. Do you want 20 years to heal the reduction of that large branch on that Japanese maple so you can start out with a set of branches that are all the same size? Because you can do that. But a scarless Japanese maple undeniably is more beautiful than a rugged Japanese maple. It's a feminine, smooth, delicate species. This big, massive scar really does spoil it. Now, that's not to say there aren't times where that's the advisable thing, especially early on when you're making decisions on a tree that maybe doesn't have the best branching structure. But you have to think about that. And in Korean Hornbeam specifically, if you're not contemplating the fact that that is not going to heal, then you're messing up.
Right.
To not be at least thinking about it. Yeah, and obviously you can carve it to ease the transitions and stuff. You see this on a lot of the Carpinus orientalis that are coming out of the Czech and in Eastern Europe. And I mean, they're amazing and they have to be cut back and they have to be, transitioned. And that's totally respectable. Cutting back to the trunk though, that's one thing that I think they've done very well. When you look at Maria's work, when you look at Andrea's work, when you look at a lot of the orientalis and how they're handled, a lot of times they're utilizing the primary structure and just shortening that and then growing out the transitions of taper. And I can totally get on board with that.
Yeah.
But the moment when I look at this particular tree, that big wound on the trunk tells me there was something and maybe it needed to be removed.
Right.
But I wonder.
Yeah,
I'm left wondering because now it's just a giant scar on the front of the tree that's covered in a cut paste that's kind of the same color, but you can see it blatantly in the picture, and that's never going to go away.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, for real. Yeah, there's some beautiful ones in here.
Yeah, you went back to the old school. What do you got?
Yeah, I always like the older Kokufus. I feel like you get some wild form. Sometimes they're not quite as refined.
Kokufu 50 there.
Yeah, this one's 50. I think I looked it up. That's from like 1976. And the first hornbeam in here is on page 37. And it's just kind of like the semi-cascade upright, like one trunk's kind of going horizontally and the other one's more upright, but both of them have this really craggly movement all the way throughout it. Every branch on it's like super gnarled and has crazy movement. And there's definitely some flaws where some branches have inverse taper and stuff, but and it's not like the type where it's like every square inch is filled with a little twig and it's like a perfect line silhouette that like your brain almost puts on it immediately. But it just got me to stop and look at it because it's like has all those characteristics of Carpinus that we talk about with like the gnarly movement through every single square inch of it and the almost grotesque looking trunk with the knobs and the muscling and whatnot. And
that lower right branch is straight fire.
Oh my gosh, it's like key for sure.
Cut that off that tree, and that tree is not only half the value, it's a third of the value as far. And here, economic value aside, visual viewing value, the pleasure of seeing. You lose everything.
Yeah, just covering it's like
it just
sad.
became a quince. When
Yeah,
you cut
right.
that off.
Yeah,
it just became a tree of a different species when you get rid of that.
Oh yeah. So this one really just got me to stop and look at it. And I mean, there's like some crossing lines and some things that like you wouldn't expect to see in a Kokufu typically, but it's like to have. That's back in the 70s, though. Yeah, exactly, right? That's kind of why I like them back then. There's some wild stuff going on.
That's really, to me, that really speaks to the tightening of the framework of the Kokufu. Because now, Are the trees more refined in 73 versus 50? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Can you see the evolution of the craft? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Can you see the evolution of age of trees under the bonsai practice? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. There is undeniably organic beauty in those trees that you have a harder time finding. And that tree may have evolved to a more modern Kokufu album. We might find that tree or see that tree at some point in time. And then we can really be more scrutinizing of how it's evolved and whether it preserved the merits of that original potential. But undeniably seeing less formality in the older exhibition creates a context that's discussion worthy.
Absolutely. And it makes me wonder how much of that's intentional to keep it craggly and unramified. Because, I mean, in the other book I grabbed from Kokufu 47, so 3 years prior, you can see this multi-trunk one here on page 55 that has significant amount of ramification and is it's a multi-trunk composition, and they all have great movement. And it's much denser, so it's like the technique and understanding. I mean, I don't know if these are the same artist, of course, but like there is a understanding that of how to ramify them and what they look like, you know. And you still have throughout the Kokufu and a lot of really formal ramified, like highly ramified designs and stuff. So to see that craggly one with a lot less twigging, that's all perfectly laid out, and there's branches moving back towards the trunk and things like that. And that first one we were looking at compared to the second one, and it's like, so it makes you wonder, like, okay, well, this must be intentional to leave these spaces between the branches then, or at least it's well done enough to where it looks intentional and plays on the characteristics of the species really nicely.
Yeah, that's straight. I'm glad you went to the oldies. I tend to not go back to the oldies for whatever reason, but there's like some real gold to be found in those. Anybody who's listening, you guys can check out these Kokufu albums. Not that you guys have the 40s and 50s of Kokufu albums, but they're available. You can get them if you really want to dig.
Definitely.
What do you got, Brandon? Come on.
Yeah. I picked up a few different books. The later 70s and 80s don't have as many Korean hornbeams, I feel like, as the probably, I don't know, late 60s through mid 70s.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. That's what I'm kind of wondering sometimes, like the different phases of what in Japan, like what people liked, what they wanted, what they were working on. And then the one thing I have noticed just over the past few years of looking at these Kokufu albums is that depending on the species you're looking at and the people that have been growing them, they're applying all these different techniques and things to these trees to accomplish very different things. You know, I think, Brock, you just touched on two different trees that were very different. And I think whether they were grown by the same person or different people, I think they were trying to accomplish two very different things. And then when I look here at book 78, page 204, I find a pretty mature Korean hornbeam, very, very traditional, I'd say. A lot of left, right, back, all the way up. Pretty mature trunk. But the nabari on this is undeniably just massive. It's huge, and it really seems like the person that was growing this was focusing more on a traditional kind of upright design, but they really, you know, probably spent a lot of time, you know, developing that nabari and developing that really traditional structure. Whereas, you know, if I flip
Hang on, is that in an unglazed pot?
Yeah, unglazed.
What do you think about that?
For me, I think with it being a pretty big, powerful tree, I think it fits well. I actually personally really like broadleaf in unglazed containers.
Do you?
I know a lot of people don't. I'm just a huge fan of unglazed containers. I just feel like for the majority of them, just the patina that they create over time is undeniable. Not saying that you don't get beautiful patina on glazed containers, but the type of glazes that were applied to the containers, say 100 years ago, I think were a type of glaze that were able to take on that patina. Whereas I feel like a lot of artists and potters that are creating vessels these days, not all of the types of glazes they use are able to, I think, accomplish the patina that some of us are after. And sometimes these newer glazes take a lot longer, or sometimes they don't even take it on at all.
That's tough to say
Yeah,
because they're not 100 years old yet.
that is true.
Let's just be really clear. 100 years, long time.
Long time.
Long time.
Long time.
Long time sitting outdoors, being watered, fertilized, now in the modern era, sprayed with chemicals for that very smooth, glassy coating to not be degraded by the grit of bonsai.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
I also think we can't say that you're necessarily right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like once we start to see a glazed Ronlang container 100 years from now, we might be like, holy shit, that they straight up broke through, you know? I don't know. We really, unfortunately, are not going to be able to answer that question ourselves. Future generations can look back and be like, damn, the antique Chinese and antique Japanese pots really did have something that Western pots do not.
Yeah, I really just wonder at the level of glossiness the antique containers had when they were originally glazed, though. I just, for something deep down inside tells me that the modern chemicals or things we use today are just a lot. Everything on Earth seems a little shinier today than it was.
Could be.
Yeah, you know,
it could be.
Back then.
It really could be.
People love shiny things.
Yeah, it could be. I think people also like less effort.
Yeah.
This
is true.
More, and I don't think that less effort was even a thought process in antique Chinese pots. And in fact, I think the more effort that was put into the pot, the higher its value back then, you know, and like even now, those are the pots and those are the pieces that we appreciate. The evolution of the modern world to needing to be more efficient, to be able to make a quantity that you can sell at a price point that's market worthy has led to the degradation of the quality of craft and handiwork that goes into the vessel. And this was a conversation I had with Ron Lang when I first started working with him. He just said, I can't make a pot that costs $5,000 or $7,000 because nobody will buy it. And I said, well, I would like to see what a $5,000 to $7,000 Ron Lang looks like. And there's big box Rocky Mountain juniper. That was Ron Lang's $7,000 pot. Nice. You know, I said, if you make it, I will buy it. And that's what he made. And everybody that comes here that sees that is like, what is that?
Yeah.
Right.
Where did you get that? Who made it? What the heck? And it's like, yeah.
All right.
He was capable of that. These people are capable of that.
Yeah.
If we give them and you know, there might be people out there being like, dude, fuck you, Ryan. I don't have $7,000 to spend on a bonsai pot. Bro, you're sitting in your fucking Crystal Palace up there at Mirai. And it's like, nope, that's not what's happening. All of the money I could be spending on everything else, I spent on that pot.
Yeah,
or I
right.
spent on that piece of Yamadori. Like, let's be really clear. Yeah. Priorities are different. And that's why I became a bonsai professional, among other things. Because then I could justify that as opposed to spending that on whatever else it could be spent on. I don't drive a nice car.
Right.
House is pretty humble. Architecturally interesting, pretty humble. 1,200 square feet. But I got a $5,000 Ron Lang that's fucking badass. And I know what he's capable of if he has that kind of economic backing. And you're seeing what Tom Binda's capable of, and you're seeing what me and Ramondi's capable of, and you're seeing what Horst Heinzelreiter's capable of. And that's the shit that's going to last. Let's be really clear.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yeah,
Me
give
too.
them the support they need.
I mean, and then if you flip to 258 on the same book, number 78, you see a multi-trunk, pretty mature piece of material there. And it's in another unglazed container. And I think
Interesting.
that I see that pattern with the Korean Hornbeams. A lot of the Korean Hornbeams in the Kokufu albums, they're in unglazed containers. And for me, I wonder, is it because they're such a powerful, mature looking broadleaf, or what is that?
But you're also seeing fashion.
Fashion.
You're also seeing fashion in bonsai, right? Like if you look at the Satsuki azaleas, so many Satsuki azaleas are shown in unglazed containers right now. Will that last? Is that in transition? And I will tell you, I had the same feeling that you did, Brandon. I mean, the flowering pear used to be in an unglazed antique Chinese container, and then it went into a glazed horsed oval, and now it's in a glazed horsed, completely ostentatious container, which I think is its best iteration of itself currently. Like, I love that tree container combination, maybe as much as any tree container combo in the garden.
Wow. Okay.
But it took me a long time to get to the point where I liked and appreciated glazed container and saw them in the value of the broadleaf for the color combination to be contextually expressive of the design I was seeking.
Yeah, but not every single broadleaf paired with a glazed container is able to provide the same type of look throughout the 4 seasons, right? Whereas when you have an unglazed container, I'm not saying that it's better always, but I feel like if you have a tree like a hornbeam that has that 4-season capability to give you something really special in every single season, and you have it in unglazed, it really provides a very specific type of look in every single season. So maybe it's just that Korean Hornbeam does better in unglazed in a lot of situations versus glazed. Who knows?
I think you're also touching on, like what you were saying earlier too, makes a lot of sense to me, where like because their trunks get so muscly and gnarly looking and they're branching so jagged often, that it lends itself to that kind of unglazed, more elder, like, because they talk about using unglazed for conifers because it kind of touches on that age. They gain patina and look older. And it seems like you're not seeing Japanese maples in unglazed throughout those.
Not too
same
often at
Kokufus.
all.
So it's
Not
like
too
those
often
are
at
kind
all.
of softer, more elegant trees. So it's like maybe part of that is that hornbeams have that ruggedness that could fit in an unglazed on top of the fad of the time too.
Could be. I like that. Could be.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, it's all
Right.
hypothesizing and
For sure.
pontificating. I think one thing to not underestimate is the trends and the fads and the fashion of the
Right.
time. I got a Korean hornbeam here that I know this tree well. I think it's a Kicho bonsai, so a Japanese masterpiece. That, to me, there's maybe one other Korean hornbeam that I've ever seen that I would say usurps this as the grandest representation of Korean hornbeam. Like,
Nice.
this is a natural Korean hornbeam. That is what Korean hornbeam looks like in the native environment over time with age. The nabari is insane. The trunks are insane. The branching being broadleaf expressive in the up and out form.
Yeah.
Like, everything
Well, so
about
great to
this
see.
tree is super duper intense and awesome. It's angular, its ramification, its transitions, the spacing, the primary branches, the transitions. This is page 29 of Kokufu 73. Possibly number 1 or number 2 Korean hornbeams that I personally have had contact with and seen. And the interesting thing to me about this is in a glazed yellow, kind of like straw, golden color, shallow oval container. And I would tend to say, like, when you see Korean hornbeam in person, the bark looks kind of like creamy white, sometimes even gray. But I do tend in my mind, for whatever reason, to associate Korean hornbeam with a slight gold to the trunk, and obviously there's phenotypical differentiations tree to tree that naturally occur. But this yellow, and it's almost like the trunk, because it's sort of like a gray or a creamy white trunk, might be reflecting some of the gold. It also might be reflecting some of the light coming off of the tatami mat. or it also might be reflecting some of the warmth of the lights that it's being shot under, but it has almost like a golden hue to the trunk, which typically I would associate with like an analogous color palette that makes the tree seem a lot more quiet, but the quality of the tree just rages out of any sort of quiet, subtle aesthetic from an analogous pairing that I've ever seen. I mean, it overwhelms, not in a bad way, it overwhelms any kind of objective design criticism of the tree pot combo color analogy versus complementary perspective. Now, when I look at this, would this tree look better in a blue container, mid-tone, even slightly on like the robin's egg blue side of things? It would be a different aesthetic entirely. But I have a hard time arguing with the effect and the impact that this tree has in that container, and just the totality of that composition. Whoever, because like these Kicho bonsai, if it's being exhibited in the Kokufu, it's owned by a client.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's not owned by a professional. That does not mean anything. It's probably, and I would say almost dependably, being cared for by a professional because its execution is so incredibly on point. If you were a real stickler, you could say maybe the branch tips are slightly coarse or whatnot. This tree is tough to dissect in that way and criticize, because all of the branches have so much movement from the base all the way to the tip and everything else. And I think this is probably what happens with a very mature Korean hornbeam that's been under the bonsai practice and been pruned a lot, where the value of all of that movement in the primary, secondary to maintain proportion, stacking on that really fine, youthful tip to this would make it so large in the canopy that it would probably override the proportions that gave it value. So I can completely get with this branching structure as an approach to ramification in the broadleaf form that is slightly defiant of this notion of the more refined tips you have on the tree, the better that it is.
Right.
This defies that. And I think it works aesthetically. Historically, it's a very important tree. Everything about this, when I look at it, is like something to study and digest and learn a lot from, that would potentially be things that I would be teaching or stating as truths of the design aesthetic that this slightly defies. And these trees are what pull you back and help you understand that design knowledge in bonsai is not black and white. There are exceptions. And when an approach is exceptionally executed, the room to deviate from what is expected as a standard is absolutely there. The space is there to do something different. If you do something different, not at a level that's almost as good as the expectation, not at a level that is equally as good as the expectation. If you're going to do something different, you've got to do it at a level that exceeds the expectation. I think this tree exceeds expectation.
Would you guys say that when the Korean hornbeam is grown vigorously, that the proportions like stay, how would you say this, like more convincing?
When it is grown quickly?
Or just vigorously, like if you're developing it, like is it one of those species you feel like if you're just really pumping it with a lot of nutrition and fertilizing heavy, like wouldn't you say that like the proportions stay pretty convincing, like compared to like a lot of other broadleafs?
As in like the leaf size?
Just everything, yeah.
So I think this is really where building your data bank of old broadleaf forms is mandatory to exploring the boundaries of broadleaf design, because I'll just take you on my journey as you ask me that question.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the different ages of broadleaf trees that I see in my drive up to Mirai. And there are some very old white oaks that exist right along the highway as you're coming towards Mirai, and then as you turn off the highway and you wind through the farm ground, there's some ancient white oak out there. The ancient white oak do not have this highly ramified, built-out canopy. It's a lot coarser branching that's sparser with finer tips on certain areas and not so many on others. And when I think about that, I almost see the age in this hornbeam with less of that fine ramification. That would be more of an indication of the vigor of a younger tree than what's being shown in this, which this is a very old tree. Old as a bonsai, old as an aesthetic.
Okay.
And so I do think when you grow a tree young and strong, full of piss and vinegar, fed with a lot of fertilizer and, organic inputs, inorganic inputs that allow it to achieve an abnormal amount of tertiary density inside of that space, that you do achieve a beautiful aesthetic. But like that aesthetic, as you mature it over the course of time, there's a limit to what you can do inside of that containerized space. And when you hit that limit and those branches mature to what that has, that almost harkens back to the antiquity of the oak ramification that I see on my way to Mirai. And I like that. I don't think you see it often. But I like that. I think that's really interesting and compelling and thought-provoking.
So do you personally see that tree getting better over time, or do you think in that time frame right there that it was photographed in that book 73, it was probably in its prime or mature, like best state?
Yeah, that's because the canopy is at its outer boundary of proportion and the fine ramification has more or less been pushed outside of that.
Yep.
And it's such an old tree that what are you going to do? Cut all those big branches back and regrow everything? Like, that's a tough ask, right? Because the longer a tree is under the bonsai pressure of the confined environment, to reinvigorate that tree, to then cut it back and have it respond appropriately with the kind of youthful vigor means it goes back into a grow box. You grow it for a few seasons untouched to get that kind of water movement and vigor back in the tree. And then you cut it back and then start to regrow it. I mean, that is... It's risky. It's a important bonsai masterpiece. It's a Kicho bonsai. It's a historical tree. It has lineage that potentially predates World War II. I don't know the total history of that tree. And you're talking about a 20-year rebuild to rebuild a tree that's a historical masterpiece. I mean, now we're talking about uncharted territory. Right? Uncharted territory right there. As a consumer of bonsai, if you were a collector, that would probably be something you would think about if you were going to buy that tree, because it's not going to be cheap.
Yeah.
And you're saying, where does it go from here? How much better can it get? Have we hit the crest? But here's what I also want to defy, that the necessary path is downhill from here. I do want to say that for a tree of that caliber, that old, of that quality, reaching that point is the inevitable journey down from there. It's hard to deny that is the most likely path, right? I mean, who has the expertise to be able to rebuild that tree and have the rebuild be of the same quality as the build that got it to this point? I think those are skills that might be waning in the modern era of bonsai. Like, I think Japan had those skills before the broker model took over in the bubble period of the late 80s, early 90s. You had post-Kanto earthquake, the unification of bonsai artists in Omiya in the late 1920s. You had 400 or 500 nurseries doing bonsai in Omiya as it proliferated in the bubble boom era of the 80s, post-World War II, right? And then you had this excessive amount of risk, the longer that you hold a tree as a bonsai practitioner, that gave rise to the broker model of quick exchange. Purchase for X amount, sell it for slightly more. The more I do that, the more money I make and the less risk I take on. That's the broker mentality. And I remember going to Japan going before I started my apprenticeship to visit gardens of people that I had seen in Bonsai Today, which were repurposed Kimbone articles that did not have great trees in their yard or weren't even doing bonsai anymore and were brokers, but they were featured as tree makers 10 or 15 years prior. And recognizing that the tree maker mentality in Japan, when the economic stimuli of the bubble period came into Japan and money was flying around and bonsai values boomed, people tried to capitalize on that. It really undercut the level of expertise and craft, because immediately people that had those skills transitioned and stopped putting those skills to work, and those skills stopped developing and evolving. So there was a period in Japan where I think that tree could have been redesigned with the same level of quality, or maybe even a higher level of quality. And I don't know that necessarily still exists.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Like this Elon Musk, like him or hate him, I have no feeling about Elon Musk. Honestly, I don't know enough. He's spoken poorly of, he's spoken highly of. It depends on what side of I don't care, right? He made a statement that this might be the only time that we actually have the accumulation of all of the factors that would allow us to go interplanetary in existence as humans. And if we miss this moment, we might not ever have that chance again. Now, before he said that, I thought, well, evolution and progress is inevitable. But he cited population decline, potential economic decline, potential natural catastrophic disasters, degradation of civilization, societies, and government as all of these things that could potentially crash our opportunity to move outside. Now, I don't want to go live on Mars. I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. The only thing I care about is the fact that it helped me realize, and obviously I'm going to take that and I'm going to extrapolate it to bonsai, because that's really what I care about. Okay. I realize there's moments where great things can be done, where you have all of the factors present. And if they're not done, and that's not continued to be facilitated, there will become a moment where it cannot be done anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, we really have to recognize we have seen a moment where Japanese bonsai as an art form was able to do things as a culmination of everything that evolved from the collector tree gaining economic trend and favor in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the Shinpaku were heavily collected, and a shift of taste in the late 1800s of trees that were much more domestic in their form to the value of the contorted form that created the fantastical Shinpaku that we appreciate in Japanese bonsai today. That's an early 1900 change of aesthetic taste that came with the evolution of the art form. And then you saw the unification of artists in Omiya post-Kanto earthquake. And then you saw the impact of the bubble period post-World War II. You saw the impact of World War II, the bubble period post-World War II, and now you're seeing a different shift where the same progress and continued trend forward might not be possible. Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not.
Yeah. Factors are changing.
Factors are changing. Climate is changing. Not literal climate, but literal climate is also changing. The climate of the art form under those pressures and conditions is changing, categorically changing. It's changing in the United States. It's changing in Europe. You have these windows.
Yeah.
What happens when Randy Knight goes?
Right.
I know. Here's what I know. I know what happened when Telperion went.
Right.
We lost a lot.
Yeah.
We lost a lot.
Me and Brock were just talking about this the other week in the workshop. I mean, who's going to fill those shoes? Those are some pretty big shoes to fill.
And our assumption is, somebody will come along. No.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe
That's to underestimate the profundity of Randy Knight.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? I mean, these all of the factors that contribute to and just appreciate the fact that we have the luxury to sit back and we have the luxury through books and documentation to look at the evolution of an art form to its highest level in the Kokufu albums. Right? So we can see it. You can put your finger on it. You can identify it. You can talk about it. It's visual in front of us. We don't have that capacity in American bonsai to understand where we're at.
Right.
We don't have that. We don't know. We're a little bit like in a dark room, kind of like, whoa, where's the light switch and where's the door? You know, like
Not yet, at least.
not yet.
Yeah.
And we assume we're going to get there because that's the path that Japan followed and that's the natural trend. We're going to continue to progress and get better, right?
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, ooh, I don't know. It just speaks to, hey, the focus does need to be on the trees on a daily basis, on mastery of craft, and on execution of art on the highest level, or we might look back and say, wow, the heyday was 2010.
Right.
The heyday was 2015. You know?
I think it'd be great to see somebody, or maybe I'll do it someday, just compile like all of the photo data and create hopefully a free resource for the North American and I guess the world to take advantage of, but just to start tracking these trees and the evolution of them, kind of like you've done, Ryan, with the trees you've developed here at Mirai, but more on a macro and more, like
Where we're
being
at,
able, where we're at with everything and where we're going, and being able to have that as a resource moving forward for just the bonsai community. I think would be very powerful to be able to go into a search bar and type in Korean Hornbeam or type in black pine or whatever, and have the best black pines or the best hornbeams come up, and not necessarily that it has to be the best ones, but maybe you organize it in a way where there are the better ones, and then there are the ones that are have historical value or whatever. So you can take these images and kind of measure over time, like, okay, did it get better? Did it get worse? Was it mishandled? What do I like about it? What do I not? And even just using it for your own purposes of developing your own material and wanting to pull different types of ideas and inspiration.
Well, I think this is one of the great I think this is one of the great discussions of the weak point of a culture that prioritizes the individual over the community. Because I think there's a lot of merit in Western culture, and specifically because Europe has a historical kind of marker that I think does sort of hit the mid-ground of Japan to the United States, whereas Japan, there's like this history and there's this commitment and obligation to the history and preservation, where in Europe, I think, kind of walks the line between the individual and the historical, and I think the United States is all about the individual. There's no better argument than what you just said for accumulating that history, having that historical data, being able to do what you just said, than having an annual national show. And are people in the United States going to maintain their passion, commitment, interest? Are they going to care about an annual national show? I think the answer is no. It's a lot of work. It's a huge, you would have to view that on a level of, it is so important that we have no choice but to do this.
Yeah, right.
And all the professionals would have to be able to make a living buying into that and committing to that and doing that. And it would have to afford the economy of it. It would have to afford the merit, but we would all have to agree to the long-term vision. You need a professionals organization for that. You need a lot of fiscal sponsorship for that to make that happen. But that is how you would get, because you look at these kokufus and you see the evolution of these trees and you see the highest level of these species, and now all of a sudden you've got documentation. You could do that with Japanese bonsai. With American bonsai, I totally commend Bill for, he's aiming to get his 10th show. That's 10 shows. We're about ready to celebrate Kokufu 100.
Right.
That's 10 times the shows. Right? That's 10 times that process. And that is what's built the reference point that we have, which is like totally worth noting. That is a really big deal, man.
So what you're saying basically is that's what it's going to take to push the art form forward in this country, and being able to have what I think a lot of us want, but maybe we can't have.
Yeah, I guess I've never really thought about why you would have an annual exhibition, and maybe I just sort of answered my own, like, look, hey, I'm an American through and through. Fortunately and unfortunately, there's good and bad to that. So I'm not going to be that guy. But did we just tap into why there's value in it? I mean, as we sit and, scrutinize, judge, appreciate, long for a culture where we have that, where you're saying that would be such a valuable resource for North America, and you look at what it takes to get there, and just having worked the Kokufu 7 or 8 times, I can tell you, I don't know a lot of people in North America that are going to be willing to go through that, bigger landmass, different culture, all of the things, modern era, blah, 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 blah. Like,
in your opinion, if there was a national show, would you have to do it like in a central location to this huge continent that we live on?
I still don't think you get buy-in, dude. I still don't think you get buy-in. Look, California's the size of Japan. They had a GSBF convention every year. When they had it in the north, people from the north showed up, and a few dedicated individuals from the south came. You had it in the south, everybody from the south showed up, and a few dedicated individuals from the north showed up. Now they have it in a central location on a much smaller scale, and Jonas said that there was a greater diversity of north and south, and the central community of California bonsai showed up in spades because now it's in their backyard. I don't know that you ever get American bonsai or bonsai in America. Let me just say that. Bonsai in America. I think that's more appropriate. I don't know that you get bonsai in America to a point where you have the buy-in and prioritization and community understanding of significance and importance to get to an ultimate goal where people are going to self-sacrifice to make it happen and build that thing. That was a thing. Look, Brock is looking at Kokufu 47 and Kokufu 50, which he's saying is in the 70s. The bubble period was in the 80s, which means that they were dedicated to this prior to the economic boom of bonsai. I used to read stories about post-World War II masters splitting a bowl of rice with their apprentices because they were so broke they couldn't eat a meal that fed everybody. Mr. Kimura used to unwire trees, straighten the copper wire, and re-anneal the copper wire because they couldn't buy new wire, and it lost a half gauge every time they re-annealed it. That's the level of commitment we're talking about to get those albums. You think people in the United States are going to do that? You know what I'm saying? We going to split a bowl of rice at Mirai? Like, I would like to tell you that I think that I would. I would like to tell you that I think that I would. I don't know. We would never know until we get there, and I hope that we never get to test that.
Yeah, right.
But like, I don't know that bonsai has made its way into our core value system. Maybe on certain individuals' level it has, but certainly on a cultural level, it is definitely not. Definitely not.
Well, then maybe that's something like, you've built an amazing gallery on your website. Do you think that could help if
I think that has to be and let me just give credit where credit is due. My gallery is directly an offshoot of what Walter Paul did for me when I was in college. Because I could go on to Walter Paul's gallery, which does not exist on the internet anymore, and I could look at all of his trees and all of the build photos of all of his trees on the gallery. I'm talking, I didn't spend hours. I spent days, weeks, months looking at that thing because it gave me something that I could not get anywhere else. It was, looking at Japan was untouchable. Looking at a European achieving that kind of progress and development and giving that to me as a resource at a young stage in my bonsai, dude. Game changer. Mirai's gallery, the commitment to photographing our trees and putting them out in the public like that, and you saw what it takes to photograph those trees. Dude, one of those trees takes 3 or 4 hours to photograph in the way we shoot it now. That is my commitment to trying to offer the same resource in my own way that Walter gave me. And Walter did that for you. Walter did that for everybody. You know, like this is the whole thing about like looking at standing on the shoulders of giants. Dude, if David Easterbrook wasn't digging stuff out of the forest before bonsai knowledge was a part of North American culture and not figuring things out, the Montreal Botanical Garden, which is arguably one of the best collections in North America, would not exist. He was the original curator and the guy who built it up to what it is. His knowledge and contributions as a judge to the national show, as an exhibitor at the national show, as a major figure in North American bonsai would not exist. Like if Dan Robinson hadn't prioritized collecting wild trees the way that he did, Randy Knight might not. Randy Knight standing on the shoulders of Dan Robinson. Let's all be really, really clear about that, right? Dan Robinson standing on the shoulders of Dick Melody and Harold Sasaki and the original collectors in Colorado. Like, these historical factors of the evolution of our culture, for these to not be spoken and documented is the death of our bonsai culture. It's like the reason, just the same as the reason I do the gallery is to pay it forward in the same way Walter did that for me. The reason that we do asymmetry is to continue paying it forward because that shit needs to be known. People need to understand how we got here and the people that got us here and the sacrifices that were made to get us here. We really are privileged.
Right. Just like how we were talking about, each tree has its own story and that's worth capturing. So does the evolution of the community as a whole.
Totally. Yeah. It's amazing, man. This shit gives me chills when we really dig into, and I know that there are other people. There are some online historical, there's a gentleman in Phoenix, forgive me that I don't have it off the top of my head, who's trying to put together the historical compilation. And I think Aaron has done some research and spoken with him. Yeah. Dude, what Aaron Packard's doing at PBM, that World War II exhibit was a doctorate on bonsai history from the internment camps and the Japanese American influence on bonsai culture in North America.
Yeah.
I want that information available publicly. You know, like what Aaron did is a service to our bonsai culture with that, you know?
I think actually, just to excite you and plug the museum a little bit, we've joined a app called the Bloomberg app that's like part of tons of museums throughout the country, if not the world. And on there, Catherine, our communications director, and our manager, Sarah, did a great job of, I think they've uploaded like every historical exhibition we've done. So you can find that on the Bloomberg app.
Dude, we need to trumpet that to the world.
Right?
We should really talk about that and feature that, because that, dude, that's, this is the stuff. Like, have you guys ever seen Valley Uprising? The documentary of big wall climbing in Yosemite?
Oh, yeah, yes.
I don't think I've seen the whole thing through, no.
Oh my gosh. When you talk about big wall climbing on a global level, it was completely, and I'm not saying I'm not an expert in this, but like I went down, just like I went down a deep rabbit hole on like street skating and breakdancing when I was in Japan, because I saw like some component of tangential information to bonsai. When I started watching the Real Rock series and going to the Real Rock film festivals and following rock climbing, and then I saw Valley Uprising, which basically isolated generations of climbers that created the free climbing movement that is now like the free solo movement, like the evolution of that generationally, the mentality, the motivation, the drive, the figures that got rock climbing to the point where it is now as an Olympic sport. It's like, we need the same thing for bonsai, that generational tracking and that historical marker. And we don't have it. We don't have it. But that's really encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice having things like that app or these podcasts like yours and Addison's and Jeremiah's that do talk to a handful of these figures, how we got them. And
Kevin Ferris and Ryan Houston with Bonsai Time, they're doing it. I really, I really think Hugh and Jared are doing a similar service for Australian bonsai with their podcast. Like
Adrian Bird and Scott just started one too down in New Zealand.
Oh, great.
Pretty cool.
Man. Stuff, it's important. It's important. Maybe this is the modern Kokufu as far as historical documentation and what. I don't know. At least the human side of the bonsai pursuit.
The stories for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like these old ones too, though, because it's like really interesting to see, because you do see some that are extremely refined and similar and like clearly lead into the bubble period, like the two I'm looking at right now. But and like the aesthetic of the bubble period, but then there's some like that first one I was talking about that kind of seems more intentionally designed to be like those oaks you were talking about, where they're older, it's coarser towards the tip, but gnarlier through and through.
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of times I think it gets put on like, oh, they didn't know what they were doing back then. But I remember I'd done a small little book series with Aaron at the museum where we've looked at historical bonsai books and done something like that. And one of the first ones we did was on Yuji Yoshimura's book that he made as an addendum to when he started teaching classes to the Western world. And in that, it was like a small little 50-page, tiny little pamphlet paperback book. But like the information in there was like so much deeper than I expected. Like he was talking about the different soil ratios that you would use for a pine in development versus refinement versus a deciduous in refinement versus development, and like all the different techniques of wiring and pruning of refinement and developmental techniques and things like that. And it's like, oh, so this information was still known to these people. It was just, it makes me think that like a lot of times it's like, oh, well, the trees weren't refined or the pad structure's different back then because they didn't know how to make it look nice. It's like, no, those were choices that they were making, and they did know what they were doing. It's just that they didn't have as strict of a bar they needed to meet to get into the kokufu. They had more freedom to play with form and to play with design that I think seems like it kind of got a little bottlenecked during that period from what I've learned.
Dude, formality is a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
Leads to the highest level and also constricts the creativity. It's like, imagine if a national show in North America became so refined that suddenly Dan Robinson's freedom of form no longer is allowed in because it doesn't meet that criteria.
Yeah.
Like you would lose so much.
Yeah.
You would lose so much.
Well, they didn't even start using wire on trees in Japan until what? Like, I think just, was that turn of the century?
I want to say 1920s, 1930s. I'm not.
I think that's what I was reading. I was putting together a timeline for the museum.
And so that was like, sounds like the very beginning of Kokufu, right?
Pretty much.
So when that started, that's like when wire was being applied to these trees.
But even the beginning of the Kokufu, I don't totally, because you think with the 100th show that it's been going for 100 years, and apparently that is not true.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't even understand all of that. Here's the thing about Japan. That history exists. Somebody told me that in the Omiya Bonsai Museum, the historical walkthrough that was present documenting the history of Japanese bonsai at the 2017 World Bonsai Convention in Saitama apparently is that literature and that walkthrough is at the Omiya Bonsai Museum, which I would love to see, because I was working, so I did not have a chance to walk through that, but it was groundbreaking history that would explain so much. But like, I don't know when the Kokufu actually started. I'm sure I could figure it out if I went and looked at it. There's a lot of other things that are demanding our time, but like, I'm always motivated to know more, right? There's too much to know to find it all out, but like,
so much.
The gift of technology is it's relatively easy to find if you look for it.
Yeah, I want to dig deep and try to find out who specifically started using copper, if that's like documented.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Because from what I understand, it was steel first, right?
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's like, who started using raffia?
Right.
Who started using raffia? When did that happen? Why? Who? You know, it's like,
Interesting.
I've heard this, and I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that Daijuen, the Suzukis, started decandling on black pine.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's what I've heard
I don't
too,
know if that's true. Dude, I take that shit for granted. We decandle black pine, get shorter needles, shorter internodes, and bifurcation. That hasn't always existed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and like Dan Robinson says the same thing about like when you came back, you learned how to take care of ponderosas because he was decandling ponderosas and they were, dying back, and some would survive, some wouldn't and stuff. And he's like, oh man, I learned so much after Ryan came back, and now I can keep these trees so much better. So
that's cool. Yeah, man, this stuff is pretty wild, pretty recent. Like the modern approach to bonsai, pretty recent. But like I remember the first exhibition I ever went to during my apprenticeship was called Irodori, which was a local prefecture-wide exhibition in Saitama, and it was not like a major exhibition, right? So there were trees of all different qualities there, and some of Mr. Kimura's clients in Saitama wanted their trees shown, so we went. It's where I met Peter Warren for the first time, actually, which was a pretty fateful meeting for me. But Arushibata pulled me aside and had me, and I couldn't even speak Japanese at Irodori. I mean, I didn't understand what the hell was going on. I was just trying to not get in the way. But showed me this tree, and he's like, this is a cutting grown, like a clip and grow black pine. Not decandled, never wired. And Mr. Kimura had pointed it out to him, and then he shared that with me because he could speak a little bit of English and help me with that at the beginning of my apprenticeship. Thing had never been wired, black pine. It's fucking insane.
Right.
To think about that, a clip and grow black pine, like, can you even fathom that right now? It was badass. Even at that point, with a low level of knowledge and a very unrefined appreciation, I was like, that's pretty fucking cool.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. All right, boys. We got stuff to do, and I could do this all day. Like the depth that I am happy to dig into in the discussions of bonsai. This is like totally stimulating for me to talk about all this stuff because it's what I don't know. I don't know how it resonates for everybody listening, but like these discussions typically shoot me off in a different direction, right? Like they give a perspective that's like, now I'm going to think about this conversation
Right.
for a long time. I'll listen. I guiltily admit I do listen to my own podcasts, not because I want to hear myself talk, but because what we talk about in it, especially with guests that have a lot to offer, is like valuable information for me. But I enjoyed today. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was
Yeah,
really fun.
it was really nice. A little bit of a fall wrap up, a little bit of ephemeral discussion of life, and a deep dive into Korean Hornbeam that then somehow circled back to life and bonsai culture again. It's like another Brian Smithers moment.
Right. Oh yeah.
Anyways, happy holidays to the both of you.
Yeah.
Likewise.
New Year's
Likewise.
coming up. I hope we have a good one in 2026, but we'll
be
keep the
badass.
party going.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
I know.